A long time ago, a rift suddenly appeared in the sky, and monsters from who knows where invaded Earth through that rift. Earth immediately fell into despair. Millions of people lost their lives, and the number of injured was countless, while the survivors lost their families or became refugees. However, 3 years after that massive upheaval, superhumans gradually began to emerge. They possessed special abilities that could take down monsters, something even the most advanced national defense systems could not do. As the number of superhumans increased, the era of human counterattack had arrived. The superhumans gathered to form an army. They fought against the monsters and gradually reclaimed territories known as safe zones. In these safe zones, humans no longer had to hide from monsters and began to rebuild cities, while many dangerous lands remained referred to as wastelands. The unfortunate people living in the wastelands had to endure the violence of an anarchic regime and the fear of monsters, wondering every day whether they would survive until the end of today. The world continued like this, divided into safe zones and danger zones, and continued to operate. In Seoul, amidst the hazy smoke and severe pollution, a group of people suddenly appeared. It was unclear where they were headed, but after a while, the man leading the group suddenly turned around and asked the young man, who was completely covered up behind him, "We haven't been over there before, have we?" "Huh, you're leading the way," the young man replied. "You said you're not a superhuman, just an ordinary person, right? What's your name?" The young man pulled down his hood, revealing a handsome but cold face. "Kim CEO," he said. "I'm Kim CEO." He was still very young yet to unlock his unique ability. The men in the group seemed anxious. Every few steps they would ask CEO if they had arrived yet. It turned out they were heading to the territory of the copper spider, and at that moment the group had begun to enter its lair. The copper spider was a level 19 monster, quite easy to hunt. First, they just needed to chop off all 8 of its legs, then cut off its head and only take the body. CEO kept reminding them that it was best to start with the 2 front legs because this monster used them to attack. Moreover, they had to pay special attention to the white spider silk that spewed from the monster's mouth, because once it ensnared or struck them, it would be the end. "I know already, damn it," one guy in the group couldn't help but shout. "Why do you talk so much? Acting tough like that in front of a superhuman is useless, you useless ordinary person." CEO was not angry when people said that about him. "Didn't you say you once defeated an 18-level lizard?" "I'm sorry if I offended you, but just as I was saying that, CEO suddenly heard a noise coming from behind him. His sharp instincts immediately sensed that he was being attacked, so CEO hurriedly lunged forward to dodge the blow. At the same time, he pushed the man who had just touched him away. The 2 of them fell flat on the ground, but CEO's quick action just now saved both him and the man from being ensnared by the spider silk. Just then, a very fierce copper spider appeared above them. The group of superhumans immediately took their fighting positions, but this monster looked much more terrifying than they had imagined. Some began to doubt whether it was really a level 19 monster. "What are you all doing? Why are you standing there? Get out of the way!" CEO yelled when he saw the copper spider preparing to spit silk again. Its silk-spitting speed was truly very fast. While these people were still dazed, one man got caught in the spider silk and his head was immediately severed. In the horror of his teammates, "Damn it, did you guys just plan to blink and look?" In the horror of his teammates, damn it, were they just supposed to blink and look? The CEO lost his patience and shouted at this moment he felt something was off. The level of this attack team was too low, and their combat experience was also very poor. Earlier, the broker had said that they were a well-trained attack team and had recently taken down an 18-level chameleon. The CEO only needed to lead them to the territory of the copper spider to earn a fortune, but judging by the current situation, that seemed to be a blatant lie. At this moment, the copper spider launched a new attack. The CEO gritted his teeth, fortunately this time. The Iron Man, who had just scolded him earlier, managed to regain his composure. He charged forward using his sword to block the 2 front legs of the spider. However, the strength of this monster was too great, causing his hands to tremble violently. Then the man delivered a punch, although this punch was not very effective. But next, he transferred electricity from his body to the monster. The CEO saw with his own eyes how the opponent utilized electrical energy and muttered, At least the title of Iron Man was true. The copper spider was temporarily paralyzed at this moment, and that guy immediately signaled his teammates to charge and attack. With one person paving the way, they were much more enthusiastic. Nearly 10 people surrounded the spider from all sides, but they forgot everything the CEO had just instructed. They used their weapons to stab into the monster's body, cutting its front legs, and were warned not to touch its body. "You fools!" he shouted in despair, but it was too late. The copper spider was now completely enraged. Its eyes widened red like blood filled with fury, then it swung its body. Almost all of these low-level, superpowered individuals were thrown away. The Iron Man cursed, "Damn it!" Just a moment ago, the situation was a bit better, and now it had fallen into a deadlock. So he recklessly charged towards the copper spider alone. However, taking it down by himself was not an easy task. The man was pierced through the chest by the monster's front leg and lifted up as it prepared to devour him. This man struggled by gripping its front leg that was piercing through his body, then transferred electricity to the monster. Shocked by the high voltage, it writhed in pain and finally threw the man away. He fell right next to the CEO's vehicle, but despite his struggles, the situation was not looking good. Now the entire low-level attack team had been wiped out by the copper spider, leaving only the CEO. He did not think the situation would turn out this bad. He was supposed to just be a guide. In the desolate area, number 17, branch manager Kim Busick had just received a phone call. "Bitches, have you taken another case?" "All right, I will send someone else," Busick replied and hung up. He seemed to be in a bad mood. Outside, a female employee named Jamie was still busy admiring herself in the mirror. When manager Busick opened the door and stepped out, she was startled and said, "Tell the hunting team of Chansu to head to the exchange center immediately," Busick said. Jimmy nodded and then asked if they were about to repair the barrier again, after all that had been happening frequently lately. Then Busick asked where the CEO was. Jimmy replied that he was guiding the team hunting the copper spider, but he felt something was off. Just a level 19 copper spider should have been dealt with long ago. That kid is not normal. I hope he will be okay. When the CEO returns, let him know to prepare. "And you should stop admiring yourself in the mirror." Busick sighed. However, based on the current situation, the CEO was not doing well at all. The attack team he led was all rookies and had been completely destroyed. Now, only the CEO was left facing the fierce spider and had no idea what to do. He took a gun out from his chest pocket, and at that moment the wild spider began to spin its web. Having long been accustomed to this dangerous job, the CEO was very agile. After timing it perfectly, he opened fire. The Iron Man, lying on the ground in agony, saw this and still had the nerve to criticize him. "Those bullets are useless! Shut up and watch!" the CEO snapped. The bullets he had just fired were now embedded deep into the copper spider's flesh. But the noteworthy part came later, when they suddenly exploded. Clearly, the victory belonged to CEO Yu, the Iron Man, who witnessed this scene. His face showed clear astonishment, a bullet core. If he had something like that from the start, why didn't he use it right away and wait for us to die, huh? This person truly has a talent for provoking. CEO Yu was furious. "Are you even sane? If guys like you had the skills as stated in the documents submitted to the center, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Now you still intend to blame me." CEO Yu was extremely annoyed that he had to waste several precious bullet cores on this trash. "If you really have the ability, then go ahead, Bon Chen, otherwise don't cause trouble for others. Look closely, this stupid fake superpower user, even someone without superpowers but with good equipment and experience could take a life. It's a level 19 monster." CEO Yu spoke while putting away his gun and taking out a large knife. He had guided hundreds of hunting trips alone, but from the beginning these guys had always underestimated him. Just because you are someone without superpowers, CEO Yu still had to clean up the mess for them. The knife in his hand was incredibly agile. In the blink of an eye, he had severed one leg of the monster, and CEO Yu didn't stop for even a second, but quickly cut off the remaining legs after finishing this task. The monster's combat power had nearly dropped to zero, and according to the precise lesson he had guided, but no one had listened before now, it was just necessary to attack its head and everything would be over. Watching how decisively CEO Yu acted like that, the Iron Man got goosebumps. He declared that anyone who trembles in fear before such large monsters would forever remain a rookie. "The level you submitted to the center is fake, right? The 18-level long-tailed chameleon monster is replaced once a year. Surely you pretended to hunt it even if you just picked up its fur, right?" Being hit by CEO Yu's words, the dark-hearted guy could only remain silent, but he couldn't help but acknowledge that guys like them had quite impressive courage, although the first teammate had already lost his life. But no one ran away. Even when the Iron Man's stomach was torn open, he still tried to hold it down and fight back with all his strength. To be honest, CEO Yu was very impressed, but that couldn't change anything. Faking level documents is wrong. If you have time, you should focus on improving your skills instead. Surely you have a reason for hunting like this. But it's not something worth my attention. Have you realized the price to pay for your deceit yet? He stepped on the Iron Man's chest and pointed the knife at him. I know that's a serious crime, right? The Iron Man jokingly replied, and CEO Yu felt very regretful, because he didn't have enough power to take this person's life. Because I don't have enough power to take this person's life. While you are desperately wanting to cut the throat of that stupid guy for what you just went through right now, the CEO heard a voice echoing in his head, urging him to take the opponent's life. After all, I'm already in such a miserable state. It's hard to wait until that person finishes their last words before they pass away. The CEO isn't too concerned about this. He's just confused. He doesn't know what the voice he just heard was, but since it hasn't echoed again, the CEO guesses he must have misheard. Now it's time to return to the center and settle accounts with the broker. What is this? Jimmy. The CEO kicked the door open and stormed in with a fury like a volcano erupting. How dare you throw me into the trash like that? Jimmy, who was busy looking in the mirror, was startled by him. Calm down, CEO. It seems like you're not overreacting, are you? Yes, that's right. The CEO gritted his teeth and said, don't you know how serious the situation is? Seeing the CEO looking like he wanted to devour her, Jamie quickly tried to excuse herself, saying she had been deceived as well. But the CEO didn't believe her. He decided this time he wouldn't share the commission with her anymore. Furthermore, from now on, if Jamie didn't tell him the complete information about the clients, he would take her life as well. But how could we break the rules of the organization? According to the customer law, Demi-June stammered, and before she could finish her sentence, the CEO squeezed her chin and threatened her, you better do your job properly, while scolding the opponent until they were dazed. The CEO wasn't really someone who suffered losses. He just felt very annoyed. If it weren't for managing Branch 17, he would have cut ties with this wasteland a long time ago. Hey, even if you don't want to, the psychics are very sensitive since the guides keep lingering around this area. Jamie said that. The CEO's anger, which had just subsided a bit, erupted again. Damn, these psychics keep being psychics. If we're going to die anyway, what does it matter if we die at the hands of a monster or a hunter? He shouted, recalling the scene earlier in the spider territory, wishing he had the power of that impersonating hunter. At that time, he would use it much more effectively, but just as he thought of this, the CEO suddenly took a punch from someone. Before he could clearly see who it was, his throat was squeezed tightly and he was lifted off the ground in front of his eyes, facing a proud face. The psychic you just mentioned is here. Do you want me to send you off to sell salt right now? The strength and physique of the opponent far surpassed that of the CEO. The feeling of being choked at the throat was not pleasant at all. Seeing the aggression in the CEO's eyes, the psychic increased the pressure in his grip, and the CEO thought this time he was really about to be killed. Then a girl behind spoke up. Anyone related to the organization can act as a representative of the guild and can use the organization's name whenever needed. Any action that intentionally harms the members of the organization will be considered an intentional attack on the organization. Don't you know these rules? This girl is a hunter in the wasteland area number 17, a psychic with enhanced vision named Park Eun-jong. The organization they mentioned is a very influential one, as it is the only guild that still strives to maintain peace in the wasteland after the genocide due to the spatial rift. It is the only guild that has built safe places for people to survive and take on missions like hunting monsters. And that is also the organization that CEO Yu is serving a superpower user who is attacking a non-superpower member of the organization. Are you sure you are ready to face the consequences? For this matter or not? Wang Trong continued to ask. The guy who was choking CEO Yu was also a hunter from Zone 17, a physical superpower user named Kim. What Wang Trong just said was not wrong at all. So after that, even though he didn't want to at all, he still had to let go. CEO Yu was thrown down to the ground in the literal sense with a red mark shaped like 5 fingers on his neck. CEO Yu tried to stabilize his breathing. Wang Trong sat down in front of him and worriedly asked if he was okay. I'm still fine, Hunter Wang Trong. CEO Yu replied intermittently. Wang Trong threw a disdainful look at that guy as if he were very noble, not knowing what this was all about. If it weren't for the appearance of another hunter, Seong-Hu would probably have jumped in to fight with her right away. This person was the captain of the Zone 17 hunter team, Marlin. Mr. Jong Chan-Su was the one whom Busick had just called Jamie to the center to discuss something important. At this moment, Busick was waiting for them in a private room, and Su also called CEO to go with him. He saw that all the members of Marlin's hunter team were gathered here, which made him a bit worried. He didn't know what had happened. After they entered the room, Busik immediately announced that they had just received a mission to protect the barrier from the city of Kwangmin-Ion. It seems she fainted again, right, CEO Yu said. You're right. From now until she recovers, we are required to act as bait, Chansu replied. Who else? Even though I have never done it before. But it seems that recently, there have been more incidents regarding missions like this, right? CEO Hu didn't seem very enthusiastic about this matter. It seems she is currently restraining herself. People say that she hasn't been able to sleep lately. Then let them go protect their own land. Do they think we are their slaves? CEO Hu still wouldn't give up. But Manager Busik said that this time the opponent must be very desperate to come to us. Just hearing the conditions they offered shows that. Because the reward after completing the mission is to promise citizenship to those wandering in the wilderness like us. CEO Hu was extremely surprised after hearing this. While Chansu was a bit calmer, then they must be at their wits' end. Who would have thought they would offer their notoriously strict citizenship approval as a reward for us? After hearing this reward, CEO Yu proactively volunteered to take on the mission. Huang Trong also wanted to go, because she wanted to visit the famous city rumored about CEO Hu. He, of course, also wanted to obtain citizenship, so he would also take on this mission. The Marlin team had gathered enough, so Tsu told them to gather at the southwest exit at 6 o'clock tomorrow to depart. That night, CEO Yu didn't rush to sleep but studied some things. The safe zone, Kwangmin-Ion, was one of the largest cities in the world after the genocide. On the edge of the city, there was an energy core barrier preventing monsters from entering. The barrier mentioned was this energy core. It had always been maintained and protected by a high-level superpower user named Bitches for the past several decades. However, due to her issues, it ultimately led to problems with this barrier. Their mission was to hold out until she recovered and returned because if a level S monster attacked while Bitches was recuperating, even if most residents in Wangmian were superpower users, they would be defeated in the blink of an eye after encountering such a disaster. The city has decided to change its strategy shamelessly. They have decided to ask the people from the wasteland whom they have always looked down upon for help to save their own people. Therefore, in the earlier conversation, Chansu mentioned the bait and the reward for this mission. As mentioned, it is the citizenship rights of the people in Kwangmi-Eon City, along with 3 members of the Marlin hunting team that CEO Yu continues to carry out their mission. Initially, the guide Tsu intended to follow the old route they were familiar with, but CEO Yu said that during the recent time, the environment has changed quite a lot. It is said that a level 5 monster Gagoi has appeared in this area. Therefore, following the old route is quite dangerous. Thus, CEO Yu has planned to chart a new route to avoid all monsters from level 11 and above. After that, Ben took out a map and pointed the way for the 4 of them to start on the new route charted by CEO Yu, but they hadn't gone far when CEO Yu suddenly signaled for the group to stop. "What's wrong, kid?" CEO Yu impatiently asked. CEO Yu signaled for everyone to be silent, then sat down to carefully observe a fresh footprint on the ground. CEO Yu wasn't sure if this was a monster's footprint or not. Therefore, he had to ask Hunter Huang Trong to use his supervision to take a look around, especially at the thick clouds of sand in the distance. Huang Trong immediately activated his superpower. She looked through the clouds of sand, but saw nothing alarming. What is going on? Don't scare others anymore. CEO Hu urged, and CEO Yu replied that if he wasn't mistaken, a group of little demons had passed through this area. About 15 minutes ahead of them, they have exceptionally sensitive hearing, and even though they are heading in a different direction from theirs, he was sure they had caught the scent of them and changed direction to come back. Just as CEO Yu said this, Huang Trong also became particularly panicked because in that thick cloud of sand, she had seen something unusual. He wasn't lying, they are truly heading back towards us. Chansu clicked his tongue. He knew he could trust CEO Yu with the position of leading the group. And what CEO Yu wanted to do now was to block the path of that group of little demons. Because among the 4 of them, 2 were already not suitable for fighting. It was him and Hunter Huang Trong. To the north, there was a bridge they could utilize. CEO Yu asked the burly rough guy Hu to carry Huang Trong on his back because they had to run to that bridge as quickly as possible. This kid, when did he learn to give orders to others? Hu gritted his teeth in annoyance but still had to carry Huang Trong and run. Who said he was a physical superpower user. That kid is pretty cool, you know. And I advise you to run faster. Huang Trong on his back was giggling as if the little demons were chasing after them from behind, so they had to run at full speed. Although CEO Yu was the only one without superpowers, he also ran very fast. However, the little demons were just as fast as they were. Not long after, they saw the level 18 monster army appear right behind them. Speaking of this type of monster, if there is only one, it would be much weaker than a level 19 spider. But when they work together, they become very strong, therefore facing an army of monsters. If there is only one, it would be much weaker than a level 19 spider. But when they work together, they become very strong, so facing a horde of monsters is a challenge. Monsters are extremely dangerous when encountered in vast, flat areas, making it difficult even for superpowers to fight against them, looking back at their current team formation. There are only 2 level 17 superpowers, CEO Hu and the Eagle, but among them only one has combat skills, Chansu, who is also a superpower with fighting abilities. However, he is only level 10, so confronting them directly is a reckless act. Therefore, CEO Hu led them to the bridge, which is about 4 meters wide. The length is approximately 6 to 7 meters, making it a good defensive position. If the captain and hunter CEO Hu defend well in the middle of the bridge, theoretically they could win easily. The problem is there are 2 variables in real combat, so CEO Hu did not dare to make any predictions. After arriving at the bridge, he quickly assigned tasks as previously discussed. 2 men with combat abilities will confront the monsters in the middle of the bridge. The first variable is the only girl in the group. Whenever a battle occurs, she is the only one that needs protection because she has no combat skills. Protecting the Eagle will distract Chansu and CEO Hu to some extent, so it's best to keep her away from the fighting. To avoid causing trouble for the monsters, CEO Hu shielded the girl with his body and drew out a dagger. Although he is not a superpower, he has experienced hundreds of real battles, so he at least has some ability to protect himself. The second variable is that skill levels are just numbers that do not fully represent a person's strength. Captain Chansu is well known in the area as level 17, but during their time working together, CEO Hu has never seen him in real combat or verified his skills. Conversely, CEO Hu and the Eagle, although level 17, have only recently joined the Marlin hunting team. It is still unclear how well they will perform in battle if these variables are not resolved. Therefore, CEO Hu cannot relax. After they had just formed their ranks, the small monster troop had already chased them down. As the captain, Chansu naturally had to take the first action. His weapon is a double-edged axe. Chansu swung the axe powerfully, sending all 10 small monsters flying with just one strike, taking advantage of that moment. Chansu charged forward to take down a few more. CEO Hu was also incredibly brave. He was young and full of energy, so when facing the small monster troop, CEO Hu unleashed 100% of his power. Watching how they fought, CEO Hu felt that those 2 variables seemed to be just his unnecessary worries. Although the small monster troop was quite numerous, their sweeping power was incredibly strong. This strength was indeed terrifying. However, one of the 2 variables that worried him still occurred because while Xiong Hu was focused on observing the 2 people in front, a monster silently approached them from behind and targeted. The Eagle was pulled down to the ground with a cry of distress. Xiong Hu was immediately distracted and turned his head to look ahead, shouting, "Don't look back!" CEO Hu yelled urgently, which made him frustrated. "Damn it, that thing just gives orders to others," he muttered angrily while venting his frustration on the small monsters. At that moment, the small monster swung its axe, wanting to chop off his neck. Fortunately, CEO Hu managed to pull her back in time, so the axe only managed to cut a bit of her hair. The 2 rolled a few times on the ground, and CEO Hu pressed close to the edge of the bridge, shielding the Eagle behind him. Since he did not possess superpowers to participate in the fight, he had to resolve this situation himself. He needed to avoid dragging the other 2 down. However, because CEO Hu did not have superpowers, this was still very difficult. Even if he acted quickly, the knife in his hand with its purely physical damage was still not enough to defeat the small monster in one blow, and it even made it furious. CEO Hu kept attacking while retreating, rolling on the ground, but he was clearly at a disadvantage. He was almost struck by the axe in the hand of that small monster. In a desperate move, the Eagle charged forward, using her small dagger to stab into the shoulder of the enemy monster, causing it to drop its axe. At that moment, CEO Hu sprang up, decisively using his large knife to cut off its head. CEO Hu and Chansu had also completed their defensive tasks. The 2 of them had just cleared the small monsters and turned back. CEO Hu scolded, "You, the guide, you have to protect her carefully. CEO, you blame this CEO, the guide, you must protect her carefully." The monster's blood-stained hand is still in shock from the recent situation. The reason why it immediately retaliated is that you couldn't completely eliminate them, so they attacked me. How was I supposed to know they would ambush us? Besides, I tried to help. But this kid didn't. CEO, it's right that you told him to focus on fighting. Chasu interrupted him, saying if you leave, it will be even harder to defend from behind. The situation would be chaotic at that moment. Then he turned to CEO and asked, "Are you okay, CEO?" CEO replied that he was fine, but in reality he was still heavily impacted. He felt not only had he failed to protect Oolong Trong, but he also had to rely on her help. No matter how hard he tried, not having superpowers was indeed a huge disadvantage. That's really unfair. "Hey, CEO, we should leave here quickly. There might still be other monsters," Chansu asked, but this time CEO shook his head because there are many low-level monsters here. Wandering like this shows there are no stronger monsters, so everyone can relax now. The four of them slowly moved forward after entering a desolate, abandoned city. CEO Hu immediately asked, "Have we arrived at our destination?" CEO didn't respond, but suddenly dashed forward, making CEO Hu furious. "This kid isn't answering again. I'm talking to you." Kong Yu quickly climbed up to the roof of an abandoned house and called the other three to climb up with him. From this position, they could see the dome of Kwang Mi-hyung where they were to carry out their mission. From a distance, this barrier looked particularly grand. The four of them moved closer, and Wang Zhong couldn't help but reach out to touch that dome. But just as she hesitated, Xionghu suddenly grabbed her arm and pushed her towards it. Wang Zhong let out a loud scream while Xionghu wore a triumphant smile. "Ha ha, did you get shocked? What if I had a heart attack?" Wang Trong quickly pulled her hand back, but in reality she felt nothing. Seeing that Xionghu confidently reached out to touch the dome, and indeed he felt nothing either. He thought something would happen when he touched it, like being shocked or thrown back, but in the end nothing happened. Because of that, Xionghu began to doubt whether this thing could actually stop monsters. Chansu then said that this dome had existed for over 15 years, so he could completely trust it, and thus the four of them moved inside. As soon as they passed through the dome, they were quickly stopped by a stern-faced officer. He demanded that the group present valid documents. Chansu immediately presented his documents, and after a successful scan and check, the officer handed them 4 wristbands. These looked like beautiful crystal bracelets. The officer also reminded them that the defensive front would start at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Therefore, they should rest tonight and be on time at their accommodation, which would be assigned in the public training area, and after sunset, they were not allowed to leave their positions. The officer then gave their group 4 bracelets that looked like beautiful crystal bracelets, and he reminded them that the defensive front line would start at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So tonight they should rest, and tomorrow they must be present on time. The accommodation will be assigned at the public training area, and after sunset, they are not allowed to leave their positions. Because the residents of Kwangmin City will be very worried if there are migrants wandering around at night. What if we intentionally wander around? CEO Hu asked him, very annoyed by the arrogant attitude of this officer. Then you will lose a hand, and if you deliberately remove that ring, it will explode, so you have to be careful. At this moment, all 4 of them had already put the rings on their hands. CEO Hu couldn't help but show a panicked expression when he realized that he was holding a time bomb. Sometimes CEO Hu didn't understand whether they were hunters or a kindergarten. Next, the officer led them deeper inside. In fact, CEO Hu knew that if that thing was meant to stop monsters, a thin energy barrier would be enough. But that seemingly extravagant shield actually symbolizes the prohibition of migrants entering inside, which shows how much the people of Kwangmin City look down on humanity in the wasteland. After entering the city, both Hu and the motorcycle taxi driver revealed expressions of amazement. It was understandable, because this was the first time the 2 of them had come to a city that was completely different from their wasteland. Everything was peaceful, bustling, and people were relaxed. Drinking coffee or reading newspapers in the park, what they were experiencing was completely different from the daily struggle in the wasteland. "Did you go to the public training area?" Chansu asked, but Hu wanted to see if there was anything useful around this city. Therefore, they temporarily separated and agreed to meet again at the resting place. Hu strolled through the inner city of Kwangmin, which was so peaceful that it was hard to believe. He walked to a thrift store that had just opened when he bumped into a girl carrying 3 large boxes coming out of the house. Due to limited visibility, she dropped a card. But when CEO Hu picked it up, the girl had already disappeared. He temporarily stuffed the card into his pocket, then CEO Hu bought a few things that seemed useless, and the shopkeeper didn't even know what he was buying them for. I need them for some personal matters. How much in total? CEO briefly explained. You will pay with crystal stones, right? I don't accept iron coins, the shopkeeper asked again. Of course, when CEO Hu was about to pull out his wallet, he noticed something quite eye-catching displayed in the glass case. According to the shopkeeper, it was a magical bomb similar to a stun bomb. Just open the pin and it will explode when thrown. Are you allowed to sell weapons to civilians? CEO looked surprised. The shopkeeper explained that this was not considered a weapon because it was not dangerous, but if it exploded right in front of you, you wouldn't be able to see even a little bit. And this was produced, of course, because there were people wanting to buy it. While the two were talking, the girl from earlier hurriedly returned to the shop. Shopkeeper, did you see my entrance card? Hu immediately took the card out from his pocket and returned it to her. The girl seemed very delighted and then took out her business card to give to him. Are you dressed like that, coming from the wasteland? If you are a superpower user, I can provide you with some designs. I am not a superpower user, Hu replied. When he said that, the girl seemed very surprised. Then she started to fumble and touch his hand. Her actions were so natural that it made Hu feel awkward and pull his hand back. I told you I am not a superpower user. What are you doing? Hu said irritably at that moment. The girl flustered and apologized to him for being rude, but she also explained that she did this just because she felt a bit confused. Because she clearly felt the signs indicating that Hu was a superpower user, but when she checked again, she couldn't sense any abilities. This is really strange. Her words made Hu feel confused and shaken. After a while, the girl received a phone call from someone. There's no need to rush to say goodbye to the CEO and leave. That night, when the CEO finally returned to his resting place, he still bought that magical bomb for self-defense, but his mind was filled with the strange words of that girl. To be honest, what he always wished for more than anyone else was to become a superpower user. He had studied the signs to awaken and the methods to become a superpower user. But in the end, he still couldn't become the superpower user he had always dreamed of. Time passed, and the CEO accepted the reality and withdrew to immerse himself in work. He thought he had given up long ago. But today, when someone suddenly told him he was a superpower user, it stirred something deep within the CEO. He couldn't sleep, and this feeling was really uncomfortable. He didn't know why that girl could say such unreasonable things. The CEO tried to erase these vague thoughts, because he knew he would get into trouble if he let that affect his work the next day. The following morning, the CEO and his teammates were present before the barrier. Besides them, there were quite a few hunters from other wilderness areas to protect the city. 10 seconds counted down before the shield was deactivated, and everyone looked tense. And when the countdown reached 0, they all rushed out together. As the guide, the CEO also played the role of a strategist for the team, and he would make survival the goal. In the end, like last time, Chansu had no objections and chose to trust and follow him. The other two naturally did not refute either. The defensive barrier plan was officially activated. Very quickly, some people were killed by the monsters outside the barrier, and the screams, along with the smell of blood, filled the air. Chansu hurriedly shouted at his team members to run as fast as they could, and not to look back. The CEO led the three of them to turn left to temporarily avoid the onslaught of the wasp swarm that was continuously taking the lives of the hunters. There was even a hunter who couldn't take it anymore. He cried while running toward the presidential gate or whatever, saying he was giving up. Let me go back. However, he was stopped by 2 officers guarding the gate. When this man tried to get past, he was killed by those 2. He couldn't help but turn back to look. And this scene shocked her even more than seeing the 7th hunter being killed by the beast. Captain, did you see anything? She yelled, but Chansu kept running and told her not to look back. Seong-Hu and Ung were participating in this type of mission for the first time. So there were things they didn't know, but the CEO knew very well that the city of Kwangmin-jiang had called them here for a mission. It wasn't because the strength of the hunters in the city was very weak. It was simply to turn those wilderness hunters into bait. The city only needed a few baits to attract the attention of the monsters, while the barrier was being dismantled. The 4 of them continued to run with the goal of avoiding combat as much as possible, but then Ung suddenly realized there was a swarm of monsters rushing from the northwest. The CEO immediately stopped upon hearing this. Wait, according to my predictions, that swarm of monsters could be a level 9 carnivorous bird. How should we fight? The CEO asked. Kong-U shook his head. It's just a group of level 18 goblins that have made us struggle like this. Level 9 monsters are even stronger. Each level 9 carnivorous bird is equivalent to a whole group of goblins. So they basically couldn't win. Thus, the CEO took out 4 pairs of goggles and diving gear he had bought at the thrift store yesterday and handed each person a set. Then he instructed them to hide their bodies in the swamp. Although it seemed a bit gross, this was the best way to avoid the carnivorous birds. Kong Yu knew very well that the superpower users in the city could handle this swarm of carnivorous birds, but mercenaries like them could not. Therefore, they needed to preserve their lives. So the 4 of them lay still in the swamp, hearing the sounds of killing and screaming outside. Then you guide them to hide their bodies in the swamp. Although it seems a bit gruesome, this is the best way to avoid the carnivorous birds that the superpowered beings in the city can handle. Can this flock of carnivorous birds be dealt with, but mercenaries like them cannot? Therefore, they need to preserve their lives, so the 4 of them lay still in the swamp, hearing the sounds of death and screams outside. It seems to have nothing to do with them at all. After an unknown amount of time, the CEO surfaced before a scene on the shore that had turned into a tragedy with superhumans losing their lives as if they were nothing. And most of them no longer had intact bodies. Now everyone could go ashore. The CEO said that the other 3 were also following him, and although Xian Hu was a strong boy, he couldn't help but shudder at the sight on the shore. Just as Xian Hu predicted, the hunters who encountered the carnivorous birds had all perished. After that, he took out a map and said that they had to follow the footprints of these carnivorous birds. Because they were very fierce, there would be no other monsters left in the places they passed. After all, their goal was still to find a place to hide and survive. A day passed, and the team of 4 successfully held their ground. They turned on the lights in an abandoned house and waited. According to Chan Su, the last similar operation took about a few hours, so this time it should be the same. They could do nothing but sit and wait for the signal, but suddenly, Xiang Yu stood up tense and immediately turned off the lights. Zhang Yu and Chan Su also drew their weapons. Although the CEO hadn't seen anything, he felt something suspicious, and all 4 of them looked towards the door. Although it was particularly quiet, this silence made people even more anxious, and then in the darkness, a bright eye suddenly appeared, startling all 4 of them. Chan Su quickly ordered the CEO and Ong Trong to step back, because the large creature with the bright eyes was. It was a black mantis, which is why the CEO was so panicked. He was unclear about the details of this monster. He only knew it was the flying creature resembling a mantis about 2 meters tall and 4 meters long. Besides that, Xiang Yu knew nothing about its weaknesses or how to defeat it. Because there were no records about it, and with no information about the enemy, Xiang Yu suggested that the team retreat, but this time Chan Su wanted to try fighting. Kong Yu assessed this as a reckless action because not knowing the level didn't mean the opponent was weak, especially when this creature came from the territory of the carnivorous birds. This also meant it was stronger than that flock of carnivorous birds. Just as he said this, the black mantis suddenly gained momentum and leaped up. Ong Trong screamed in panic, which was understandable, because she had no combat abilities. In the darkness with limited visibility, the 4 of them turned their backs to each other to try to defend, but because it was too dark, CEO Hu seemed a bit disoriented, so he called out to Ong Trong, "Quickly use your vision abilities." She also tried to observe in the darkness, but had scanned around and still hadn't seen the monster anywhere. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. The other 3 remained silent, even holding their breath, not daring to breathe heavily so that Ong Trong could concentrate, and then suddenly they heard something approaching. The CEO guessed that the monster was preparing to ambush, and if he followed the sound, he might find it. However, what he didn't expect was that it would ambush right behind him. The CEO immediately drew his knife upward to block the attack, but the mantis's attack was too strong, directly knocking his knife away and pushing him against the wall. Ong Trong, worried, turned around and then saw the black mantis right above the CEO. It seemed it wanted to take him down first before moving on to the others. Chan Su immediately rushed towards it. Xiang Yu, not feeling any pain for a long time, finally opened his eyes and saw the captain with an axe in hand blocking in front of him. "Give it to me! Get away from here!" Chan Su shouted. Kong Yu knew that staying would only drag others down, so he quickly stood up and ran away. Yu returned to the spot of the 2 young hunters. Clearly, because it was dark, they were placed in a damn disadvantageous situation. If only there was a bit of light, CEO Hu muttered as he heard him say that. CEO Hu suddenly thought of something, so he took a glowing orb out of his pocket and threw it towards Chan Su thanks to the light from this thing. He could see the black mantis standing above him looking down arrogantly. CEO Hu hurriedly wanted to rush up, but Chan Su shouted loudly, "Stop, you can't move carelessly like that." Xiong-Hu's footsteps immediately halted. Xiong-Hu knew that the captain's words were not wrong. They were swinging swords and in a place with poor visibility and very narrow space. If they weren't careful even just a little, they would hurt each other. Based on the current situation, keeping Xiong-Hu still was the wisest decision. However, Chan-Su had also faced many difficulties fighting against the carnivorous bird, and this black mantis was even stronger than the carnivorous bird, which meant he was being cornered into a precarious situation. Even worse, that monster was not only strong, but also smart enough to set traps for its targets by making sounds from different directions. To conceal its position, CEO Hu truly couldn't imagine how Chan-Su would outsmart and outmuscle it, and then Chan-Su got into a fighting stance. His whole body radiated a glow like silver moonlight in the darkness. The other three realized that Chan-Su was maximizing his stats. And on the opposite side, the black mantis had also begun to attack. After its two legs touched Chan-Su's axe blade, it was temporarily knocked back, taking advantage of that. Chan-Su rushed up using a move that almost poured all his strength into delivering a fatal blow, but unfortunately this time the black mantis blocked his attack. Not only that, it also aggressively counterattacked. The speed of this monster's strikes was too fast. When it attacked Chan-Su, the other three young people screamed in horror. Fortunately, Chan-Su's combat experience was not lacking. He quickly flipped his axe to block the black mantis's attack. If not, he would have truly been hit. However, the strength of this monster was indeed very powerful. Chan-Su was pushed back several steps, and if he continued to be pushed back, he would lose. Not only that, this monster also used its sharp front legs to stab hard into Chan-Su's leg, causing him immense pain. The smell of blood spread in the air, making Chan-Su seem even more disadvantaged. Seeing the captain straining himself but still being pushed back step by the black mantis CEO, Hu finally couldn't stand it anymore. Despite the limited visibility, he rushed in, swinging his sword at the monster. But the black mantis was much stronger than they imagined. While still holding Chan-Su tightly, it could easily kick CEO Hu away, slamming him straight into the wall. The spot where his body hit the wall cracked into a large hole. This alone was enough to prove how much pain Xiong-Hu must be in. This series of actions happened too quickly, causing Chan-Su, Xiong-Hu, and Wang Trong to be frozen in shock, and at this moment, the black mantis withdrew its front leg from Chan-Su's leg, changing its target to attack directly at his shoulder. The legs of this monster were sharper than swords. Chan-Su couldn't bear it and let out a painful scream. His shoulder felt as if it was being torn apart. Chan-Su was breathless, feeling as if his strength was gradually dissipating. After he collapsed, the black mantis was finally satisfied, pushing him away after delivering a strong stab. Now being thrown hard against the wall, Chan-Su was truly exhausted. His whole body slammed hard against the ground. It was unclear whether he would live or die. Next, the black mantis turned its head towards CEO Hu and Wang Trong, seeming like it was their turn now. Wang Trong was so scared that his legs went weak, slowly sliding down while CEO Hu took out his familiar long dagger, even though he knew Chan-Su had failed. The outcome for him wouldn't be much better. The main weapons of the black mantis were its two front legs, which were even stronger than ordinary swords. If they faced off directly before CEO Hu could swing his dagger would have already been smashed to pieces by it. If he wanted to win, CEO Hu had to find the enemy's weakness. But did this thing that looked like a guillotine really have a weakness? Was it in the head, neck, or chest? The black mantis took a step forward, and as it approached, CEO Xiong-Yu appeared smaller and more pitiful. However, at that moment, he realized something. Because the black mantis was standing right in front of him, he could see that the connection points between its legs and body looked quite fragile based on his long combat experience. CEO Xiong-Yu was almost certain that this was its weak point, so he disregarded everything and lunged at the dagger in his hand, aiming precisely at that joint. But nothing happened at all. He immediately fell into despair as the black mantis kicked him with its front legs, sending him crashing to the ground. He hadn't even caught his breath, let alone stand up, and yet the mantis charged at him, using its sharp front legs to stab the ground just half a hand's breadth from his ears. His hands were completely bound by it. This feeling was terrifying. The black mantis did not take his life as quickly as he thought. Instead, its body trembled slightly, producing strange sounds. CEO Xiong-Yu couldn't tell if it was crying or mocking him. Was the intelligence of this monster really that high? But that didn't seem to matter much. At this moment, Xiong-Yu only felt despair. Defeating the black mantis was something that even Captain Chan-Su couldn't do. So how could he create a miracle? Xiong-yu had even accepted that he was about to say goodbye to this world. But just then, some noises echoed from outside. Xiong-yu didn't know what they were, but they distracted the black mantis, which even pulled its two front legs out of the ground and darted away through the window. CEO Xiong-yu was initially shocked, then he began to breathe heavily. He was still alive. He didn't know why the black mantis had left. He even thought it was because he was too weak to be worth its attention. Moreover, what was that strange sound? CEO Xiong-yu had never heard a noise like that before. Was it the characteristic sound of these monstrous creatures? Are you sure you're okay? Seeing CEO Xiong-yu in a daze, Yun noticed the glowing ring on her hand. That's right. It seemed he had just forgotten something important. It was the defensive barrier plan. CEO Xiong-yu raised his hand, and indeed his ring was also glowing. He then asked Yun how long this ring had been glowing. But she had been too tense earlier to pay attention. This was the signal that the barrier had been established, meaning they had to return immediately. What about the captain and you, CEO Xiong-yu? They seemed to be seriously injured. Yun hurried to assess the situation. Fortunately, Chan-su had not been stabbed in a vital area. The pain and blood loss had caused him to temporarily faint. As for Yun, she had been slammed against the wall and was still not fully conscious after the shock. Yun carried Chan-su on her shoulder. They needed to get these two injured back for treatment. Yeon-jong was responsible for helping Yun back. Although the journey was long, it was a struggle for the four of them to survive. Now it was just a matter of time. CEO Xiong-yu sincerely hoped they would reach a safe place to establish the barrier. The officers of the city of Gwangming-jo were beginning to tally the casualties of those involved in this protective barrier operation. A total of 86 hunters from the wilderness participated. Currently, 58 were reported dead, 17 injured, and 11 missing. However, what astonished them was that shortly after CEO Xiong-yu's team of 4 managed to return safely, they were quickly taken to the hospital. Fortunately, Captain Chan-su, despite being seriously injured, is still alive. Jong is in charge of taking care of him, but it seems the food here is a bit bland. So Chan-su keeps complaining. Is he going to keep whining about the food like this? You have to finish this food if you want to recover quickly. If you don't want to eat this stuff, do you want to taste my fist instead? Even if you are the captain, I won't go easy on you. The sound of her cursing echoed all the way to the hallway. CEO Yu and CEO Hu could only lie silently in the hospital bed across from them, feeling lucky that they were not the captain. Normally, Jong seems weak in battle, but when he curses at someone, he is truly fierce. Chan-su was only saved when someone knocked on the hospital room door, interrupting Jong's diss rap. At this point, she stopped scolding him. A well-dressed man walked in, introducing himself as the deputy director of city management named Beijing CEO. Chan-su seemed a bit uncomfortable meeting this person. But out of basic politeness, he still extended his hand to shake the other's hand. It seems you have recovered quite a bit, right? The abilities of our legal team are not bad at all. Right, Jin Seong smiled with a hint of hypocrisy. But why did the city management team come here, Chan-su asked. I can't answer that here, Jin Seong replied awkwardly. Chan-su understood the other's hint and immediately called the other 3 to step outside for a moment to have some private space to talk with Jin Seong. Cheong-hu guessed that the 2 of them were inside to discuss the rewards, which would be like a certificate to live in this city. But Cheong-hu didn't think this matter was that simple. The fact that the deputy director of city management personally came to visit someone from the wasteland seemed very suspicious. At this moment, in the hospital room, Jin Seong began to say some polite phrases like how it was truly a miracle that everyone survived. Chan-su did not believe in the word miracle. He firmly stated that his survival was due to the fact that the leader of the group was an incredibly capable person, referring to someone who was not a superhuman. Right, Jin Seong asked again. Yes, I still can't believe it. He accomplished such a great feat. Chan-su replied, It is indeed great that everyone survived and returned, but we are very confused because we never expected this to happen. Finally, Beijing's soul got to the main issue, and based on his attitude, Chan-su could immediately guess that the next matter was not a good one. When the dialogue between the 2 ended, he immediately called Yu and Hu back. Although still injured, CEO Hu was so angry that he broke a wooden chair in the room. CEO Yu and Yu were both silent. The expression on their faces was very complex. Calm down a bit, Chan-su, he reassured him. But at this point, how could CEO Hu remain calm, because earlier that deputy director had said that they could only accept giving out 2 citizenship certificates as rewards. More importantly, the Guangming River City had designated these two rewards for CEO Hu and Yu. This made CEO Hu extremely upset because he had almost lost his life in the recent journey. "That's the decision of the management team. We have no right to choose." Chan Su said. Liar. CEO Hu shouted at him. "How could those bastards know the inside story? If you want to give up your certificate, it's clearly possible because this person volunteered. But who is the second strongest? Isn't it obvious it's me? Why does that non-superhuman get a certificate while I don't?" Chan Su said again. "Lies." Mr. Hu yelled at him. "How could those bastards know the inside story? If you want to give up your certification, it is clearly possible because this person volunteered. But who is the second strongest? Isn't it obvious that it's me? How could that non-superpowered guy obtain the certification before me? It's time." Chan Su could no longer speak softly. He shouted at Kim Seong-ho to be careful with his words and not to speak rudely in front of them anymore. The fact that he called Seong-ho by his full name was enough to show how angry Chan Su was. As for Seong-yu, who had been scolded by Seong-ho this whole time, he showed no obvious expression. "I found it normal," and just like that, the rude guy yelled again. "Of course you find it normal, because you've already become a citizen of this damn city," even though Chan Su kept telling him to calm down. But how could Seong-hu easily accept this? His hands were clenched into fists, trembling continuously. CEO Hu had guessed that it was not the management team, but Captain Chan Su who had designated the two citizenship certificates. CEO Hu was worried because he thought that the two of them were incapable of fighting and would not survive in the wasteland number 17. Chan Su also said that although they did not receive citizenship certificates, the other two would receive other deserving rewards, and then there would be another opportunity to become citizens of the city. "Are you kidding me? I don't care about those other rewards. How can that compare to my life?" After saying that, he turned away. He was understandably angry. Because in the wasteland, no one knows when they might lose their life. Who knows if they would even wait for another opportunity? After the hospital room door slammed shut, Chan Su turned back to Seong-yu and said, "Seong-yu, the fact that you saved us is beyond doubt, so you don't need to feel guilty about receiving the certificate." Receiving it, Seong-yu had no intention of feeling guilty. Instead, he would accept it with gratitude because he accepted to participate in this mission. It was to have the right to stay in this city. This was something that Seong-yu had bet his life on, so he had no intention of giving it up. And the only issue here was whether Hunter Seong-yu could accept this or not. He was just a bit hot-tempered. But he would calm down soon, Chan Su said. Seong-yu sincerely hoped that would happen, however, that night. He suddenly woke up due to a noise coming from the bed next to him. Thanks to the moonlight shining through the window, Seong-yu could see CEO Hu quietly sitting up. Then he got out of bed barefoot and approached Captain Chan Su's bed, who was fast asleep. This guy is really crazy. When he pulled out a shiny knife, it seemed that CEO Hu was completely blinded by rage. By the time Chan Su was startled awake, the knife had already plunged into his chest. Chan Su quickly reached out to grab the opponent's hand to stop him from pushing the knife in deeper. It was all CEO Hu's fault, he yelled, then continued to push the knife deeper. He even stabbed the opponent again. Chan Su immediately lost the ability to resist, and the space in the hospital room fell into a deadly silence. CEO Hu still lay still on the hospital bed, pretending he hadn't woken up. But at this moment, cold sweat was pouring down his head from the tension. "I will never return to the wasteland again." He even dealt another stab to the opponent. Chan Su immediately lost the ability to resist, and the space in the hospital room fell into a deadly silence. CEO still lay still on the hospital bed, pretending he hadn't woken up, but at this moment, cold sweat was pouring down his head from tension. "I will never return to the wasteland again." The CEO muttered and then looked towards the CEO's bed, asking if he had heard it too. Immediately, he rushed towards the patient's bed, seemingly wanting to eliminate Seong-yu, and as he pulled back the curtain, the knife in Seong-yu's hand stabbed down. However, Seong-yu had already escaped and he only stabbed the quilt. Next, the magical bomb that he bought at the store yesterday was thrown out, and before Seong-yu could even realize what it was, it exploded, creating a blinding flash of light. This temporarily blinded him, and at that moment, Seong-yu unexpectedly counterattacked from behind, using his leg to choke Seong-ho, while he also held a dagger in his hand. After a moment of hesitation, he stabbed into his neck, and in his mind, the voice of Seong-yu kept echoing, "Kill him." This voice made his arm tremble uncontrollably, and he looked on in confusion, wondering where this voice was coming from. Despite his doubts, the voice continued to ring out, "Kill him, do it now!" Xiong Yu couldn't help but frown. It was the voice he had heard before. Not an illusion, was it? While Xiong Yu was still in a daze, Xiong Ho suddenly counterattacked. He pinned him against the wall, and Xiong Yu had no time to react. His back slammed hard against it, causing him to feel intense pain. Xiong Ho coldly cursed, "This bastard." Immediately after, he twisted Xiong Yu's arm behind him and violently slammed him down again, causing him to hit the ground hard and spit out fresh blood. From above, he looked down. CEO Ho spoke disdainfully, "This piece of gum." And as soon as he finished, he pulled the knife out of his own neck, and blood immediately gushed out like rain. It splattered against the wall behind him. CEO Ho quickly pressed his hand against the wound on his neck, gritting his teeth and cursing, "A superpower and a loser." "Without skills like yours," Xiong Yu looked up at him, his eyes filled with a glimmer of fear. But at that moment, Xiong Ho's arm suddenly trembled, and he fell face down on the ground, dying on the spot. Xiong Yu looked in confusion at his bloodied hands. But what surprised him even more was that his entire body was suddenly enveloped in a surge of energy. He couldn't help but wonder if this was awakening. His body was increasingly in pain, and Xiong Yu could only bite his lip to endure. He couldn't faint here. The evidence had to be destroyed. Thinking this, Xiong Yu went to pick up the weapon knife that had fallen on the ground, then slowly stood up and walked to the open window. After a moment of hesitation, Xiong Yu threw the bloodied knife away. Just as he finished, the trembling sound suddenly came from behind him. Xiong Yu startled and turned his head to see Chansu, who had somehow woken up looking at him. Xiong Yu was a bit unsure of what to do. Did he see him kill someone? The next day, in a dark room in the city, Xiong Yu was sitting in a chair facing a man and other hidden figures. The wounds on his face had been treated. Jin Xiong spoke calmly. "We will begin the interrogation process regarding yesterday morning in the detention room after hearing a scream from someone. The guards were dispatched, and they discovered a massacre there with only one witness and 3 injured. The incident occurred a few hours before it was discovered in the middle of the night. The hunter Xiong Ho had died on the spot from a ruptured aorta, and Chansu was also seriously injured later, dying from blood loss. The only witness was the hunter Yuan. He was cleared of suspicion after verifying his alibi and evidence, while Xiong Yu was found unconscious with blunt force trauma. Everyone here was a member of the Area 17 Marlin Hunter team, and now you are the only one who can tell us what happened at that time." Jin Xiong squinted at Xiong Yu for a moment before continuing. "You have been a guide in the Marlin team for 3 years and volunteered twice for the city's maintenance work." As a person without skills, he asked each word carefully. "May I ask, a regular citizen, is that correct?" Xiong Yu nodded without hesitation, admitting, "That's right." Jin Xiong looked directly into his eyes and continued, "I will get straight to the point. What happened last night?" Seemingly prepared, CEO Gu calmly replied, "An attacker broke in." Hearing this, a masked figure questioned back, "An attacker?" Gu nodded calmly and recounted, "Yes, someone suddenly entered the detention room last night and attacked us." Hearing this, the other person continued to ask, "Do you remember the appearance or belongings of that person?" The motorcycle taxi driver pouted and replied, "It's too dark," but before he could finish speaking, Jin, the motorcycle taxi driver, adjusted his glasses and spoke in a deep voice. "Is that so?" But this time he was also interrupted. Someone called out to Deputy Director Jin Seo, and he immediately looked up and replied, "Yes, Senator." The other person slowly opened their mouth. "This is an incident that occurred among the migrants. No need to make a big deal out of it, just conclude that there was an attack, as he said." "Then let's increase the number of patrols, shall we?" Jin Seo was unwilling. He hesitated and opened his mouth. "But this incident is quite strange." Hearing this, the senator frowned and asked, "Strange?" Jin Seo nodded slightly and then used the remote to turn on the screen. He slowly began to speak. "In the photographs taken, there is a lot of blood at the scene, but there are no traces of blood outside, nor are there any bloody footprints. This contradicts what Seo Ong-gu said about an intruder." Upon hearing this, Seo Ong-gu fell silent. Jin Seo looked at him and continued to speak. "That's why I believe Kim Seo Ong-gu fabricated his testimony to cover up his criminal behavior." Seo Ong-gu raised his head to face him and calmly spoke. "Now that I'm a witness, can I say a little? As he said, you are just an ordinary citizen without skills. For an ordinary person like Seo Ong-gu to handle both superpowered individuals, especially someone with superhuman strength, is quite a stretch. Do you think you can kill them?" Jin Seo frowned slightly and took a long time to respond. "Logically speaking, it is indeed impossible." Seo Ong-gu coldly continued, "When the mission is over." I would also just be classified as an ordinary person. Why would I risk my life to foolishly try to kill two superpowered individuals when my abilities are insufficient? Jin Seo frowned in thought, and finally he spoke. The suspect's denial is also reasonable. Team Marlin is an attack unit. It's rare to find an ordinary person with such high capability. This is likely the act of another superpowered individual. To qualify as a citizen, there are traces of a fierce fight at the scene. Therefore, he believes that if Seo Eung-gu is an ordinary person, he should have been injured. More severely than those dull wounds. This statement made Cho Seo Eung-gu recall that indeed he had been beaten badly that day, but his body still managed to endure, because he had awakened right after that. After hearing Jin Seong's analysis, a mysterious person spoke up, so there is an answer now. Why don't you draw a conclusion? Jin Seong shook his head slightly, hesitating. Wait a moment, what I just said is based on the premise that Kim Seong-gu is not a superpowered individual. The other person questioned in return. That's right, but so what? Jin Seong called out loudly towards the door. Please come and witness. Jin Seong couldn't help but be surprised. Witness only the members of Team Marlin know about you. Just then, the door to the room opened, and someone slowly walked in. Upon seeing the person, Seo Eung-gu immediately froze. He recognized the person who had just entered. Not noticing his reaction, Jin Seong spoke to the newcomer. Please introduce yourself. The person who entered was a girl wearing glasses, the same girl Seong-gu had met before. She slowly spoke. I am Marie, a researcher from the development team of the city. Seong-gu's expression immediately darkened. At this moment, Jin Seong looked at Marie and asked, What are you doing here? Marie honestly replied, I determine what abilities the superpowered individuals have and assign tasks to them. Jin Seong continued to ask her, How do you determine their abilities? Marie slowly answered, I have superpowers to determine what the abilities of superpowered individuals are. Jin Seong nodded slightly and then coldly continued, Kim Seong-gu, you said you are not a superpowered individual, right? Marie honestly answered me, confirming what abilities the superpowered beings had and then assigning tasks to them. Jin Seong continued to ask her how she confirmed their abilities. Marie slowly replied, I have the superpower to identify what the abilities of the superpowered beings are, and nodded. Jin Seong coldly continued, Kim Seong-gu, you said you are not a superpowered being, right? Of course, that must be true to a certain extent, but Seong-gu just remained silent, listening without saying a word. You are feeling anxious because of Marie's sudden appearance, and now Jin Seong is looking at Marie, suggesting she stand in front of Kim Seong-gu. Marie nodded slightly and replied, All right. Jin Seong-gu coldly opened his mouth, saying that some people will awaken their superpowers later in life, and even if Kim Seong-gu is not a superhuman at first. If you achieve some superpower in this mission, then you will still become a suspect. This is his speculation while he was talking. Marie had walked in front of Seong-gu, standing there in contemplation, looking at him for a long time. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. No one said a word. Remembering their previous meeting, Marie had accidentally touched Seong-gu's hand, and at that time she had said she could feel the superhuman ability within Seong-gu. So he is afraid that this time she will recognize it. Seeing the two of them silent, Jin Seong spoke up again. If that's the case, please confirm whether Kim Seong-gu is a superhuman or not. Marie then snapped back to reality, nodded, and looked at Seong-gu, saying, Please give me your hand. Seong-gu did not resist and slowly took her hand. Marie gently closed her eyes, slowly feeling each second pass. Seong-gu could clearly hear his heart beating wildly. He took a deep breath and then closed his eyes as well. Seong-gu was remembering the scene from that day. When Chansu was dying on the bed, he was still worried about him trying to take his last breath to remind Seong-gu to run away. Before Seong-gu could be killed, when he heard those words, Seong-gu really wanted to cry. He was not even sober enough to realize that Seong-ho was already dead, and even after taking such action. He still worried about him first. Before closing his eyes for the last time, he only left a sentence like that. Seong-gu was truly heartbroken, standing by the hospital bed crying painfully. But at that moment, a surge of energy suddenly appeared from Chansu's body, causing Seong-gu to panic and mumble, What is happening? Before he could understand what was going on, the energy rushed straight into his body, and the feeling of pain overwhelmed him, causing Seong-gu to collapse to the ground. He gritted his teeth. This feeling was just like before he awakened. Did he awaken twice? But soon, Seong-gu realized this was something even stronger. The energy was forcibly entering his body, and the pain was increasing, causing him to tilt his head back and scream loudly. After a while, the energy finally dissipated. But it also caused Seong-gu to faint and fall to the ground, slipping into a coma. Returning to reality after a while, Seong-gu still felt no difference, so he slowly opened his eyes. He saw Marie staring at him in confusion, and after a long contemplation, she turned her head to Jin Seong and said, "I'm done." Jin Seong nodded slightly and slowly opened his mouth. "Please tell us the result." Marie hesitated for a moment, but finally she declared loudly, "Kim Seong-gu is not a superhuman." This statement left Jin Seong-gu in disbelief. He panicked and exclaimed, "What did you say? Are you sure?" Marie calmly replied, "Yes, he is definitely an ordinary person." Even Seong-gu was very surprised. He was sure she had recognized that he had awakened, so what was she planning to do? With Marie's confirmation, Jin Seong said nothing more. At that moment, someone behind cleared their throat and spoke. "I think the result is clear. Let's take Marie home." Jin Seong furrowed his brow in deep thought before finally speaking up. "So it's confirmed I heard that." The mysterious person behind him nodded and said, "Let's hypothesize that this murder was committed by someone who cannot obtain citizenship trying to kill someone who can." Then he ordered that all superhumans who cannot obtain citizenship in the attack team that participated in this mission be treated as suspects and have their alibis checked. Upon hearing this, Jin Seong questioned, "So what should we do about Kim Seong-gu?" Before the person behind could respond, Seong-gu spoke up first. "I will give up my citizenship and return to the wasteland." Jin Seong's eyes widened in shock, unable to believe it. He asked the city council didn't oppose anything, so why did you decide that? Seong-gu slowly explained from the beginning, "I thought Captain Chon-su and the hunter Eon deserved to have citizenship." Jin Seong felt this was wrong, and immediately retorted, "This is something you went through a lot of hardship to obtain. If you refuse citizenship this time, you will have to start all over again if you want to get it back." He asked what the real reason was for Seong-gu to give up his citizenship and return to the wasteland. Seong-gu answered without hesitation, "As you said. All these things happen because of that citizenship. You say you don't want to survive, but you are suspected of killing the teammates who have been with you for 3 years through hardships. Seong-gu also doesn't want to keep his citizenship. And then being attacked by the real culprit who hasn't been caught yet?" As soon as these words were spoken, the mysterious person behind nodded in agreement. "It all makes perfect sense, nothing suspicious at all." On the contrary, Jin Seong still felt something was off, but in the end, CEO Gu was granted his freedom as he wished and was about to return to the wasteland. Yeon-jong came to say goodbye to him. The two exchanged polite words before she returned to the city. Seong-gu watched her back as she walked away, remaining silent for a long time. Then he turned to leave the city, but just after taking 2 steps, he heard someone calling from behind. It made him stop in his tracks. It was Marie, who seemed to be in a hurry, fearing that if she was a moment late, Seong-gu would leave. Marie panted a few times before sighing and saying, "You really walk fast." Seong-gu frowned at her, unsure of her purpose for being here. Marie smiled and said, "I really hope they don't recognize you as a superhuman and that you can leave the city." Seong-gu wasn't too surprised. He knew she was aware of everything, but if she intended to do something, she should have done it at the trial. Thinking about it, he slowly opened his mouth. "I think I awakened because of that accident." Dam Mak nodded, and Marie casually said, "I don't think you intended to kill your teammates at all. You must have been in some kind of unavoidable situation." Seong-gu looked at her in surprise. He asked, "If you know everything, then why not speak up?" He unconsciously smiled as Marie cheerfully replied, "Because I find your superpowers very interesting." Saying that, she took a step forward. Marie lowered her voice and said, "From what I can sense, it's quite novel and makes me very curious." She felt a completely different sensation from other superhumans she had encountered before. Seong-gu was startled by her words. "What does this mean?" Seeing that he was silent, Marie continued, "You know, superhumans are classified into 6 types, right?" CEO Gu hesitated for a moment before nodding and responding, "Of course I know." CEO Gu hesitated for a moment before nodding and replying, "Of course I know." With a soft laugh, Marie slowly opened her mouth, saying that most superpowered individuals fall into these 6 categories. There are superpowered individuals with physical strength, supernatural abilities, technological magic, spirit, beast connections, and magic, but just like Wang Yue's beast rice. There are some superpowered individuals who do not fit those standards. There was a completely different feeling. CEO Gu, after hearing this, suspiciously asked what her superpower was. Marie slowly explained, "I think you could say her superpower is to create a barrier to protect Wang Mion. Her superpower is actually that beast rice is the only one strong enough, creating a barrier of several square kilometers like that, and maintaining it year-round. saying that Marie continued to ask if anything strange happened when he awakened. CEO Gu frowned, pondering for a moment. Was there anything strange? The only strange thing was a voice that echoed in his head, urging him to kill superpowered individuals. After thinking, CEO Gu did not hide it and honestly said, "I think I heard a voice." Upon hearing this, Marie immediately exclaimed excitedly, "That's right! With superpowered individuals who have spirit connections, they often hear a commanding voice." What did the voice say? Xionggu was surprised, looking at her for a long time before he finally opened his mouth to reply. "I don't remember much. Although Marie was kind to him, there was no reason to tell the truth about such things." Things like that. Marie also did not doubt the truthfulness of Xionggu's words. She frowned and muttered, "Really, that's strange. It can't be true." Soon after, she suddenly exclaimed, "That's right. The feeling I get from you is very different, just like the senior business." This statement left Xionggu quite shocked. He hesitated for a moment before whispering, "That's not bad, but I really don't understand. To be honest, I feel that my superpower must just be an ordinary physical superpower. But it feels like an amazing ability that could protect an entire city." Marie gently shook her head and explained, "Of course it hasn't reached that level yet. You are a rookie who just awakened." After hearing this, Xionggu nodded in response, realizing he still didn't understand. Marie slowly explained, "During the Great Flood, when magical beasts first appeared, humanity was on the brink of extinction, but ultimately survived. It was all thanks to the appearance of superpowered individuals in a place like Gangmyeong. In the end, they could be built up like that all thanks to superpowered individuals. But what if superpowered individuals like Big Rice and Xionggu could gather together? What kind of miracle could happen?" The only thing Marie was worried about right now was, how much longer can Beast Rice hold on? For the past 10 years, she hasn't cared about her health and has maintained that barrier alone. Xionggu had also heard Chansu mention that people say Beast Rice hardly ever sleeps. He felt it was entirely possible because even in the wilderness there were such rumors. While Xionggu was thinking, he suddenly saw something. His eyes instinctively narrowed as he noticed a girl in the distance intently looking at him, but she quickly turned and left. Mr. Gu was taken aback. It couldn't be a mistake. They definitely just made eye contact. She was looking at him right. Marie also voiced her confusion. "Senior Big Rise is doing everything. With all the strength left, he is protecting the people of this city. Whether you believe me or not is up to you." Saying this, she held Xionggu's hand firmly and stated, "But my ability to sense superpowered beings has confirmed this intuition. You are a non-standard superpowered being with great potential like Senior Beatrice." She said Xionggu could end this battle with the beasts, and he could save humanity. Hearing this, Xionggu was stunned. Could he really save humanity? Isn't this too glorified? After finishing the conversation with Marie, Xionggu quickly left the city. 2 people died, and the trial for awakening was different from normal. And the message was still echoing in his head about killing super-powered beings. Mr. Gu was already having a headache about what happened during the awakening. But saving humanity, can he really do that? From the gates opening, allowing beasts to enter, to humanity nearly being exterminated, it only happened a few decades ago. The people left in the wasteland had only one wish, one goal in life: to survive, and so did Xionggu. What was important to him was not about saving humanity, but how to survive when returning to the wasteland, especially in a place like the wasteland. Only those who are the fittest can survive. One can be killed if they do not know their own abilities. Whether it is a monster or a human, it is the same. That is why being a brand new superpower user is crucial. Xionggu's top priority is to discover what his superpower is, so he is not in a hurry to return to the wilderness, but is heading towards another city where he wants to test his abilities in this eastern region. The best place for testing newly awakened superpowers at this moment. Xionggu sensed something from the dark corner in the distance. It seemed there was a sound coming from it, along with extremely terrifying red eyes waiting to be seen clearly. Xionggu quickly realized it was a monster. He was startled to encounter a monster much earlier than he had planned. He slowly stepped back as the monster with sharp teeth advanced towards him. A disgusting green slime was dripping from its mouth. Xionggu squinted at it and recognized it as an 18-level poisonous cat. At that moment, it aggressively lunged towards him. Its sharp claws lunged at him, and Xionggu hurriedly dodged. Just then, several crystal shards suddenly fell from the mouth of the poisonous cat. Xionggu noticed and glanced over as the poisonous cat pressed closer. Xionggu had to step back, but in an instant he bumped into a car, leaving him with no way to retreat. Immediately, the poisonous cat opened its large mouth towards him. Xionggu quickly dodged to the side. The poisonous cat's teeth clamped tightly onto the car behind him just as Xionggu avoided its attack. He needed to deal with its poison first. He spotted a manhole cover not far away and hurriedly ran towards it. He reached down to remove it. In an instant, his arm was covered in veins. Xionggu gritted his teeth, channeling all his energy into his arm, and before long, he had removed the manhole cover. Xionggu used it as a shield, glaring at the poisonous cat, and coldly saying, "Come here and face me." It seemed to understand his words as the poisonous cat attacked again. Xionggu avoided the poisonous cat and lifted the manhole cover to block the energy that was continuously emitted from him, making it impossible for the poisonous cat to touch him at that moment. Xionggu swung his hand up, hitting the chin of the poisonous cat, causing it to stagger back, not giving it time to breathe before Xionggu attacked again. The manhole cover immediately flew towards the poisonous cat. Its chin was knocked to the side and the cover fell down as he watched this scene. Xionggu felt that this was his opportunity. He quickly picked up the manhole cover and without hesitation jumped up to strike with the cover in his hand. Xionggu struck directly into the poisonous cat's sharp teeth, breaking them, and the beast's body fell over onto the ground. However, Xionggu did not stop for a second. He continued to use the manhole cover to strike, and the slimy fluids from the poisonous cat's body gushed out like rain as Xionggu relentlessly kept hitting it. Only after a while did he finally let go of the manhole cover. The poisonous cat had been beaten to death by him, and Xionggu dared to stop taking off the hat from his head and letting out a sigh, saying, "It's dead." Immediately after, he pulled out the knife from his thigh and swiftly made a cut on the body of the poisonous cat. In an instant, he had stripped off its outer skin. Revealing the level 16 core quality inside, Xionggu picked it up and then pulled out the internal organs of the poisonous cat, quickly cutting a piece and tying them together to make a bag. Xionggu went to collect the crystals that the poisonous cat had dropped on the ground and quickly put them into the bag made from its internal organs. He finished the task in no time. Looking at the bag full of crystals in his hand, Xionggu happily smiled and said, "I killed the poisonous cat. So does that mean I am at least a level 16 superpower user? If this is the first test, then it's a success." Saying that, he turned around and left. However, the deeper he went into the city, the more frightening the silence became. Not long after, Xionggu saw a welcome banner hanging in the city. Just looking at it, it seemed completely out of place with the atmosphere. Xionggu frowned and muttered, strangely silent. Nevertheless, he continued to move forward. As he passed by an alley, he noticed a blood stain lying there. Xionggu slowly approached to examine it, frowning and muttering, "The blood hasn't dried yet." But there were only bloodstains around with no corpses in sight, which puzzled him greatly. He walked while muttering with suspicion. Were they killed by some murderers? Just at that moment, Xionggu seemed to sense something behind him. He glanced back at the movement coming from a corner behind him, frowning in vigilance as he drew out his dagger. Then he quickly ran forward until he reached a door where he stopped. However, what Xionggu saw were 3 kids, which startled him a bit. He frowned in confusion and asked, "Are you the survivors living here?" Just as he finished speaking, another person appeared behind Xionggu. Sensing this, he immediately turned to look as the other person charged towards him. Xionggu quickly raised his dagger to defend himself. Seeing this, the other person stepped back, but he did not stop and instead used the momentum to leap towards Xionggu, jumping onto a nearby wall. Seeing this scene, Xionggu couldn't help but be taken aback. Was this person trying to take him down? While he was pondering, the other person charged at him with a dagger. Xionggu did not dare to be careless and hurriedly raised his hand to defend. A flick of his finger struck the other person. It made him fly directly away, sliding on the ground while the other person, afraid, quickly sat up. Then that person suddenly reached behind his back as if to grab something. This action surprised Xionggu, who widened his eyes as the other person quickly pulled out a gun, pointing it straight at him coldly, warning him to put down his weapon and raise both hands above his head. Slowly turning his face towards the wall, the 3 kids from earlier had also run towards that person. Xionggu looked at the cold gun barrel aimed at him and hurriedly complied with the other person's instructions, turning his head towards the wall, raising both hands and slowly opening his mouth to say to put the gun down. "I will talk. I am Kim Xionggu." This last word made the other person a bit startled. Seeing that Xionggu spoke again, saying he did not want to harm anyone. "I just passed by." However, at this moment, the other person shouted fiercely, saying he did not care if he was Xionggu or whatever, to put everything he had on the ground and get lost. Xionggu frowned slightly and asked back in a deep voice, Were you trying to rob a superpower user? The other person did not answer and suspiciously asked if he was a superpower user. Xionggu nodded calmly, opening his mouth to say if he did not believe it, would he like to check. As soon as he finished speaking, a surge of energy appeared in Xionggu's hand, and then he punched hard into the wall in front of him. At this moment, Xionggu slowly opened his mouth. If you are from a distant place, you should know what a superpower user is. This made the other person startled, trembling as he murmured about the last force of the wasteland. Xionggu could not help but be astonished and asked if he knew. A superpower user does not rob. They only accept requests at a reasonable price. And just as he was about to finish his sentence, the other person coldly warned him to face the wall. Xionggu narrowed his eyes at him and calmly opened his mouth, saying if someone was harmed because of a superpower user, they would definitely take revenge and he could not shoot. As soon as these words came out, the other person immediately froze, standing still in place, unable to believe it, exclaiming, "What?" Xionggu glanced at the gun in the other person's hand. Slowly opening his mouth, he said it seemed that weapon did not use gunpowder, it used core energy, right? If it was considered that each shot would consume a core worth several days' worth of food, he was sure the other person would not shoot easily. Speaking to this point, Xionggu's tone became more serious as he slowly said he just wanted to stay in a safe place for a few days. "I will be silent and disappear right after that." After hearing Xionggu's words, the other person hesitated for a moment before speaking. "All right, I believe you. To repay you, you will give me the cores you have, and I will use them as collateral until the day you leave." Xionggu frowned slightly, remaining silent for a while before throwing the bag in his hand to the other person. Slowly opening his mouth, he said he could easily take them back, but he would give them to him if it could make him feel at ease. Just at this moment, the other person suddenly spoke up. "You are mistaken about one thing causing Xionggu to be startled." He adjusted the gun core with his hand and then shot without hesitation. The energy beam grazed past Xionggu. It pierced straight into the wall behind him, and the other person slowly spoke, saying although he could not shoot at will because it would waste valuable core energy, he could do this much with just one core. Just as expected, it was indeed different when fully charged. Xionggu glanced back, his eyes filled with surprise at a technique that increased the efficiency of core energy. To be able to use it multiple times, that was magical technology. While he was thinking, the other person took off his headgear, revealing a young boy's face. He slowly spoke, saying he was Arang. "Follow him for a while." Later, in a high-rise building deep in the Copper Hook, Xionggu was led up to the 40th floor by Arang's group. As he walked, he curiously asked why he was so high up. Arang slowly explained that not only because magical beasts lived in high places, it was more advantageous when dealing with humans. After hearing this, Xionggu nodded, understanding that it was indeed because of those murderers. Just as he was thinking, CEO Gu continued to walk inside, but when he saw the scene before him, he was startled and panicked because there were many people inside, mostly women. The adults could still use weapons, but in this era, lacking abilities was a significant disadvantage. Ara, right after entering, walked over to a woman. In a low voice, she whispered that this woman was the captain of the Eastern Base Rena. She glanced at CEO Gu coldly and spoke, "A superpowered individual from the star. If it were before, I would have treated a visiting guest much better." CEO Gu said nothing more and silently observed his surroundings. A military base facility had already been established here. Is it due to the abilities of this captain? While he was thinking, Vina used the translation device around her neck to speak, "We are fighting against those murderous scum. We are in dire need of supplies in this wasteland. The magical beasts are not the only enemies. There are also murderous thieves, those who have abandoned humanity and hunt humans." CEO Gu thought for a moment before speaking. "Those murderers disrupting the order of the wasteland are also a significant problem. What if we assign a mission?" Vina chuckled softly, pouting, "I'm in desperate need, yet you don't want to receive anything in return." CEO Gu frowned at her for a long time before hesitantly saying, "You're right, but I'm giving you an opportunity. At least just listen." His words made Jenna unable to help but chuckle softly. After a while, she spoke. "What an interesting person you are." CEO Gu got straight to the point. "I want to understand the situation before discussing the details of the mission. How many of them are there?" Reyna seriously replied. "They live in a driving test center in the east. There are about 10 of them." Hearing this, CEO Gu couldn't help but be surprised. 10. That's strange. They don't have many yet. You have established an entire gang here." Vina coldly replied, We have killed many of them, but many of our people have also died. We used to have up to 100 people. This made Xianggu even more surprised. He spoke in a deep voice. 100 people with that many, those scum shouldn't be able to easily steal supplies, right? Vina immediately replied, Yes, but there's one thing, they eat humans. Xianggu's eyes widened in shock. Cannibals. While he was still confused, Vina continued, Besides eating humans, there's an even bigger problem. They are superpowered individuals, she said. They also have superpowered attackers. CEO Gu now understood why. He silently asked, Are they strong? Reina looked at him intently and seriously replied, No matter how bad they are still superpowered individuals. In fact, Reina felt that her subordinates were very weak. It was only because of him that her people had become like this. Reina and the people at the eastern base didn't expect much. They just wanted to kill all those scum, because they dared to look down on them as mere chickens waiting to be slaughtered. Xianggu fell into silence after hearing this request. After a while, he slowly spoke, Kill all the murderers. I will consider that my mission and will carry it out myself. Reina smiled at him, hesitating to speak. I really appreciate it, but we have nothing to offer you. However, Xianggu smirked and said, Yes, you do. Let me meet the magic engineers here. Arang couldn't help but be surprised. What do you want to do? Even Jenna couldn't guess his intentions, but no matter what, she still led Xianggu to another floor. Arang followed behind, still holding a gun aimed at Xianggu without lowering it. They quickly arrived at a storage room. Arang peeked inside and called out loudly, Minnie! Immediately, a young girl poked her head out from the pile of items. This is the mini magical engineer of the Reina base, who looked at the girl with concern and asked if her work was still going well. Hearing this, Minnie immediately sighed sadly and replied, No, even if I wanted to try these artifacts. I don't have the CEO core, Xianggu observed Minnie, silently surprised that a magical engineer could be so young. Finally, Minnie noticed him and asked in confusion, Who are you? Arang slowly explained, A superpower user from the note. He will help us. Reina over here also clarified that he seems to have something he wants to ask you. At this moment, Xianggu had noticed the items on Minnie's table and hesitated for a long time before asking, Did you make all of these yourself? Minnie nodded and smiled, replying, Not really, but they aren't very good. Xianggu felt that the girl was truly modest for creating such artifacts under poor conditions. Thinking this, he asked again, Can I touch them? Minnie shyly scratched her head and said, They're really not worth studying. Xianggu also paid attention. He picked up a gun to take a look and then remarked, It's so light. Seeing this, Minnie quickly explained, That one I broke the body of the gun. It can't handle the recoil when the trigger is pulled. Arang over here. Seemingly remembering something, he shivered and lamented, When I used that, I thought I was going to die. Xianggu just listened to them talk and continued to observe the items on the table. Very quickly, his gaze was drawn to something, a sword without a core lying in a corner. Xianggu muttered in confusion, Is this a mini? Following his gaze, she looked over and then explained, It's a modified sword, a modified sword. Xianggu puzzled mumbled as he picked up the sword to examine it. At this moment, Minnie spoke up, That one is also a failed creation. Xianggu glanced at her and asked suspiciously, Is there something wrong with it? Minnie nodded slightly and replied, I wanted to create something that could enhance people's strength and enthusiasm, and I had attached a core to the sword to protect it. But to create the force you want, I need more cores than expected. Making more places to attach the cores would cause the sword to lose its balance. If used as it is, its cutting force is very weak. After hearing this, Xianggu frowned and fell silent. Finally, he spoke up, I really like it, sell it to me. This made Minnie startled and amazed. She quickly waved her hands to refuse. I won't sell a broken thing. If you want to use it, just take it. However, Xianggu poured out his pile of cores and calmly said, No. I will take one artifact as a reward for completing the mission, but seeing such a good artifact, I feel a bit guilty. Looking at the pile of cores on the table, Minnie's eyes immediately brightened, and Arang beside her was no exception. Xianggu slowly spoke up at this moment. I will take an artifact as a reward for completing the mission, but seeing such a good artifact makes me feel a bit guilty. Looking at the pile of crystal shards on the table, his eyes lit up immediately, and Arang beside him was no exception, as Xianggu slowly spoke up. Taking it right away makes me feel a bit guilty looking at the pile of cores on the table. The two mini eyes immediately lit up, and Arang beside me was no exception. At this moment, Xionggu slowly spoke up. I am very impressed with your talent. Please use this to conduct more research in the future. Minnie, now coming to her senses, quickly shook her head to refuse. I can't take that much. Saying that, the girl even pushed the pile of cores back towards Xionggu, but Xionggu's movement was faster. He reached out to stop her and inadvertently touched her hand. In that instant, the two touched each other's hands, and something flashed through Xionggu's mind. Even Arang felt this, but it wasn't very clear. Xionggu frowned slightly, wondering, what is this? It felt like something was flowing through his mind, magical technology. The two of them stood there stunned. Arang, feeling indignant, spoke up, asking what the two were doing. Even Jenna couldn't help but remind the other guy that he had been holding the girl's hand for too long. She's just a little girl. You're still young, but the age gap between the two of you is too big. Hearing these words, Xionggu was startled and quickly withdrew his hand, panicking and explaining not to say such terrible things. It's not like that. It's just at this moment. A voice suddenly echoed in his head, urging him to kill and seize that power. The pain hit him immediately, causing Cho Xionggu to clutch his head, and as a result, the sword in his hand fell to the ground. Seeing this, Minnie couldn't help but panic. Reina thought he was overexerting himself and kindly advised him that he seemed too tired and should take a rest. Gritting his teeth to endure the pain, Xionggu nodded slightly and replied that he thought he should rest. Reina looked at him intently and kindly suggested that if he had trouble sleeping, she could sing a lullaby for him. Xionggu immediately shook his head to refuse, saying no thank you. Hearing this, Reina pretended to be disappointed and sighed, saying he didn't have to act so grown up. She would feel let down. Or should I sing a lullaby for you? Arang shivered and quickly declined, saying no need. After a noisy morning, night fell again. Xionggu lay in an empty room arranged by Jenna, thinking about the morning, and couldn't help but curse silently, damn it. That voice told him to kill again. Xionggu heard that after a while that awakening voice was supposed to disappear, but he found it was getting stronger. What is happening? That day with CEO Gu was like that, and it was the same with Chansu. Although it wasn't Xionggu who killed, his powers also belonged to him. This time that voice was dominant. What kind of power is this, especially for a little magical engineer like Minnie? The next morning, Xionggu finally woke up, but his forehead was drenched in sweat. He seemed to have just gone through a nightmare. Xionggu sat up, rubbing his pounding head, unable to help but sigh. A few days later, at a parking lot not far from the center of Mokdong, the group of murderers that terrified the Mokdong base was here. Xionggu and Arang were hiding in the adjacent building, quietly observing. Arang was watching and spoke up, saying that over there was the base of the murderers and being this close to them wouldn't be a problem, right? CEO Gu did not answer, only glanced at him and asked if there was a superpower user next to them. Arang nodded slightly and replied that yes, it was the one in charge. CEO Gu continued to ask if he knew what abilities that person had. Arang thought for a moment before answering that it was difficult for him to escape from their grasp, so he didn't know clearly, but he remembered that guy was very fast. Upon hearing this, Xionggu frowned in contemplation. Initially, if it weren't for being infatuated, he wouldn't have accepted this mission. If he wanted to fight against a superpower user, he had to be much more careful. While he was thinking, Arang walked over to open the suitcase. Xionggu frowned and asked what that was. Arang slowly explained that it was the new sniper rifle Minnie had completed today. As he spoke, Arang attached the gun to the integrated electric system in the barrel, which helped increase the bullet's speed when fired, making the gunshot sound nearly silent. And its firepower is also very strong. Arang said that he doesn't have an energy core, so he can't use it in actual combat. Minnie once said that without the core that Xionggu provided, it wouldn't be possible to manufacture this gun. So it couldn't have been made. Damak nodded, and Xionggu calmly said he hoped that thing would be useful. Arang was indifferent, quietly assembling the gun. It didn't take long before he finished, and then he slowly spoke. I believe Minnie. CEO Gu nodded slightly, then drew his adjustable sword to take a look before saying, I hope so. I hope it performs well as expected, looking at the adjustable sword in his hand. Arang hesitated a bit and asked, Are you really going to use that? Minnie was still not at ease about it. Xionggu took out a core from his hand and casually said, Using the core, huh? With this, I won't have to worry too much. The bright core in his hand made Arang exclaim in surprise, I've never seen a core that small. Xionggu slowly explained, Among the things created in Gangmyeong City, there is one that can compress the energy of the core. Saying that, he stuffed the core into the adjustable sword. After finishing, Xionggu was satisfied and spoke, "If one core can be compressed, then 10 cores can also be compressed into 1 or 2 cores." Hearing this, Arang couldn't help but exclaim, "The city really has everything, huh?" CEO Gu was a bit surprised and asked, "You've never been to a city before?" Arang shook his head gently and replied, "Never. I was born and raised in Mokdong. I heard that this place used to be a city, right?" Gonggu continued to ask, "Don't you remember anything from the past?" Ara shyly scratched his head and answered, "I really don't remember anything from my childhood." Xionggu, hearing this, spoke up to clarify. To be precise, Mokdong used to be part of a city called Seoul. Although there aren't many monsters left there, it used to be a vast city with a population of over 10 million. Arang exclaimed in astonishment. "That's incredible. If it's over 10 million people, then that place must be much larger than Gangmyeong, right?" "Of course it can't be compared," Xionggu shook his head and said. Arang thought about something for a long time before firmly speaking, "Then one day I will live in a city." His words made Xionggu recall what Xiongho had once said. But because of that, he had harbored ill intentions towards Chasu, who had also died. The more he thought about it, the more frustrated Xionggu became. Xionggu tightly gripped the adjustable sword in his hand, and a surge of energy immediately emanated from the sword. He slowly spoke, "Shall we test it a bit?" This made Arang involuntarily panic. Xionggu didn't say much and went to pick up a brick. He directly threw it into the air and then chopped it down with the adjustable sword. The brick was directly split in half. Seeing this scene, Arang couldn't help but feel excited. Xionggu was also very satisfied, raising an eyebrow and smiling, "It's ready to go." The rest would wait until nightfall to act. Time passed like that. Night finally fell, and Arang and Xionggu were still in the building. Arang went to shake the person sleeping on the ground softly and called, "Wake up, it's time." Xionggu hurriedly sat up and went to the window, gratefully saying, "Thank you for keeping watch for me. What shall we do next?" Arang slowly suggested, "They're all sleeping. Let's be gentle." Xionggu nodded slightly, then used binoculars to observe the group of assassins across the way. After a while, he glanced at Arang and suggested, "Can you help me deal with the guy at the watchtower while I go to the entrance?" Arang agreed without hesitation. "No problem." On the parking lot side, the group of assassins guarding the gate was patrolling, and the guy in the watchtower was constantly shining a light. They were quite cautious, to say the least. However, in a corner, there was still a figure that managed to slip into this place, and none of them noticed. By the time they realized, it was too late. The cold blade was pressed against the throat of the assassin, and Xionggu coldly warned, "Don't move." However, that guy was not afraid of death and reached for his weapon. Unfortunately, his actions did not escape Xionggu's eyes, and he directly severed his throat like a chicken's fresh blood gushing out. The screams poured out like rain, a small sound that still caught the attention of the guard on the watchtower. He shone the light over here, but fortunately Xionggu managed to dodge in time. However, the man who had just been killed was still exposed, startling the guard on the watchtower. He wanted to scream, but before he could open his mouth, a beam of energy pierced through his head. He died on the spot, and the light from his small movement redirected. Xionggu was safe and undetected, infiltrating inside, but unfortunately the light was like the radiance of the 10 directions of the Buddhas shining down on the nearby building. A man who was sleeping was directly illuminated by this light in the face, immediately pulling the blanket off and getting up from the bed, looking towards the source of the light. He frowned and mumbled, "What's going on?" At the same time, outside, a guard still unaware of what was happening over there stood calmly. Just a second later, he had his throat cut, fresh blood staining the walls. Xionggu had taken down another one, and he didn't understand what was happening before he went to meet the King of Hell. Xionggu looked down from above. In his heart, he sighed, truly a superpower user. Killing was incredibly easy. However, this was not the first time he had killed someone. Why couldn't he get used to this feeling? Just then, a sudden noise behind him startled Xionggu. He quickly looked back to see a figure slowly approaching with a long scar on his right eye. Under his left eyelid, there was a tattoo. In the darkness, Xionggu could still see the muscular calves of that guy. He did not sense him at all, and a wave of alertness surged in his heart. Reflexively, his hand went to the hilt of the sword behind him. At that moment, the guy had already lifted his foot and charged forward. Xionggu did not dare to be careless. He focused on the movements of the guy, but the speed of that man was too fast, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Xionggu swung his sword, but the guy dodged it. The man's legs swept across, making Seong-gu unable to prepare in time and fall to the ground. Immediately, the guy used his knee to pin him down, and Seong-gu was pressed to the ground, unable to move. The guy squinted at him and coldly asked, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" Seong-gu did not answer, silently retracting his sword. Seeing this, the guy immediately panicked and quickly stepped back a few paces away from Seong-gu. The guy coldly looked at him suspiciously, asking, "You are a superpower user." Seong-gu maintained his silence, getting up from the ground and gripping the sword tightly in his hand. Seeing this, the guy sneered and said, "Interesting. This place is too small. We can't fight here. Let's go somewhere bigger, shall we?" Seong-gu couldn't help but be surprised. What did he mean? This was the 4th floor with only a few shattered glass windows. Yet at this moment, Seong-gu was kicked out through the remaining glass window, which shattered completely. His body fell onto a car below. Arang from a distance saw this scene through binoculars and couldn't help but feel worried. At this moment, Seong-gu had wounds on him, fresh blood flowing down from his head. He hadn't even caught his breath when the guy jumped down from the 4th floor. Seong-gu quickly rolled to avoid it. The guy smashed the ground, and at the same time the group heard the noise and ran out shouting for their leader. It turned out this guy was the superpower leader of the group of assassins. He raised an eyebrow and laughed, saying, "Don't come here. He is my prey." Seong-gu, on the opposite side, stood up, gripping the sword tightly in his hand, and a layer of energy emanated around him, but he hadn't had time to act yet. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot through from a distance, but unfortunately, the leader dodged it. Arang, seeing this scene, was dissatisfied and wanted to curse, but he didn't notice that the leader was also looking this way, and Arang had also revealed his position. The kid did not hesitate to continuously shoot at the leader, but his speed was incredibly unbelievable, dodging continuously. Arang, frustrated, cursed, "Damn it, he's too fast. I can't hit him." And Arang had also revealed his position. The kid did not hesitate to continuously shoot at the leader, but his speed was incredibly unbelievable, continuously avoiding the shots. Arang cursed in frustration, "Damn it, he's too fast. I can't hit him." Below, the leader shouted loudly, ordering that building to the west. "Deal with that sniper." His subordinates immediately ran towards the building where Arang was hiding. Arang also saw this scene through the scope of his sniper rifle, taking a deep breath to reassure himself that he could do it. Right after that, the kid immediately fired again, taking down one of them. Seeing his comrade fall, the others shouted angrily to kill him from the other side. The leader was now rushing towards the car, and Seong-gu did not dare to be careless. He tried to focus to keep up with his speed, but unfortunately it was not enough. The leader was too fast. As Seong-gu's blade swung towards him, he dodged. The leader laughed triumphantly. "You're so slow!" Just as he finished speaking, he landed on the ground, and at his feet was a tire. Without hesitation, the leader kicked it forward. Seong-gu quickly swung his blade, causing the tire to split in half. However, unexpectedly, the leader was also behind the tire and saw this scene, causing Seong-gu to panic immediately. He originally wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The leader had lifted his foot and charged at him, lowering his center of gravity on one leg, and then kicked away the blade in Seong-gu's hand. The blade fell to the ground quite far from him, and the leader laughed even more triumphantly. "It seems you can't handle your own strength and have lost your blade." Seong-gu's expression became serious. He quickly pulled out the dagger from his leg. The leader raised an eyebrow, looking at him mockingly. "Awake now." Seong-gu did not respond. He only focused on him. Seeing this, the leader suddenly suggested, "Why don't you join me? I will teach you how to fight." Seong-gu snorted lightly, sneering, "You want me to go rob the wasteland with you?" At this point, his tone suddenly became serious. "Sorry, but the voice in my head is going crazy, telling me to kill you right now." Hearing this, the leader scoffed disdainfully. "Is that so? What a pity. It seems you will be the main course for dinner tonight." As soon as he finished speaking, he lifted his foot and ran away. This time, Seong-gu did not back down, but confronted him directly. In an instant, the two forces collided. On this side, the leader's subordinates had already run to the foot of the building where Arang was hiding. They quickly grabbed their weapons and ran upstairs, but as they set foot on the first floor, a thin wire suddenly wrapped around their legs. Immediately, darkness fell before them. Arang on the highest floor quietly listened to the screams, slowly retracting the rope. Arang raised an eyebrow and smiled slightly. "I put a lot of effort into making those traps. Remember to activate them all." At the same time, below, the fierce battle between the leader and Seong-gu was still ongoing. The leader became more and more excited while Seong-gu was getting tired. The only weapon in his hand was a dagger. At this moment, the leader lifted his foot and charged at him, continuously kicking towards Seong-gu. Although he tried to dodge, he was still hit. The distance between the two was stretched again. Seong-gu frowned fiercely. He had to calm down. The leader had much more combat experience than him. Seong-gu was particularly lacking in combat experience against superpowered beings, but he had fought quite a few magical beasts already. Narrowing his eyes at the leader, Seong-gu was considering the possibility, what if he tried to treat his opponent as a magical beast instead of a human? How would he deal with him? Seong-gu was particularly inexperienced in fighting superpower users, but he had fought quite a few monsters already. Squinting at the leader, Seong-gu was considering the possibility of treating his opponent as a monster, disregarding the fact that he was human. With a human form, he calmly analyzed the trajectory of the leader's attacks. Seong-gu would abandon his prejudices about what humans could do and how they could attack. Arang was on the rooftop observing the battle between the two. As long as there was a slight opportunity, he would definitely shoot to blow the leader's head off. But at that moment, the wooden door blocking him suddenly shook, clearly being affected by someone from the outside. However, Arang still did not care much. He squinted down through the binoculars and only saw Seong-gu. Arang frowned and muttered, "Take them all down like you want." "No one will escape. More importantly, I can't see the minions of the leader. Don't just stand there. Quickly lure him out." At the same time, the leader kicked towards Seong-gu, looking extremely arrogant as if he was sure of victory. Seong-gu hurriedly dodged to the side. The car behind him was dented by the leader's kick, but he did not stop and continued to kick at Seong-gu, who fortunately managed to dodge just in time. But at that moment, he also realized an issue. The leader's characteristics were speed and strong kicks, so his legs were the only source of power while Seong-gu was thinking. The leader's foot kicked towards him, and he hurriedly dodged. By the time he realized this, he was also very surprised that he managed to evade it. However, before he could catch his breath, the leader's knee kicked towards him again, and he quickly raised his hands to defend himself, but the force was too great, and he was ultimately thrown away. He couldn't help but spit out fresh blood. The leader still didn't want to let go of him and lifted his foot, rushing in while shouting, "I will finish you off with a series of kicks." However, before he could do anything, a beam of clean energy shot through him, making him grit his teeth in anger, and another beam of energy rushed in from afar. The leader didn't have time to attack CEO Gu anymore. He hurriedly dodged. Arang kept firing, scoffing and cursing. "You're hiding like a rat." Under the pressure from him, the leader was injured, fresh blood staining his shirt, as he hid behind a car, frowning and muttering about the noise he was making because he didn't back down. "An appetizer first, huh?" "Indeed, a cute little brat," he said, and the leader lifted his foot to run away. Arang continued to fire, but he still managed to evade. The leader's direction was towards the building where Arang was hiding. He ran while muttering, "All right. Although a bit late, I should start on the main course. But now I will let the brat enjoy it right here." Seeing this scene, Arang immediately panicked and shouted, "Don't come near here, you monster!" He frantically fired, but not once did he hit the leader. The speed of that guy was just unbelievable. In a short time, the energy of the gun weakened. Realizing this, Arang panicked and shouted, "Damn it, my energy core is about to run out!" Without Arang's gun to hinder him, the leader quickly reached the foot of the building. Then he took a run up and charged forward. The leader's speed was incredibly fast. It wasn't long before he jumped in front of Arang, and seeing this scene, the expression on Arang's face immediately stiffened. He couldn't believe it and exclaimed, "He can jump up like that." The leader, upon entering, threw a kick, and Arang hurriedly used his gun to block it, but he was pushed back due to insufficient strength. Arang, not daring to be careless, quickly took the crossbow from his back. He quickly loaded the arrow, aiming straight at the leader. However, the guy showed no fear and calmly approached. Arang's face was somewhat serious. The leader raised an eyebrow and asked, "Are you the kid from the Eastern Hook?" Due to the movement, the wound on his waist had torn open and blood dripped onto the ground. At that moment, Arang shot an arrow, but unfortunately the leader easily dodged it. Arang angrily cursed, "Damn it!" and then reloaded the arrow, but the leader was already stepping closer to him. Arang quickly raised the crossbow and fiercely warned, "Don't come any closer." However, the arrow was dodged by the leader. He raised an eyebrow and laughed, saying, "Missed again." Arang grew increasingly anxious, hurriedly trying to load another arrow, but before he could finish, the leader was already close to him. The guy smirked wickedly and said, "Hello, my appetizer." The hand holding the crossbow trembled, and the leader's menacing face was getting closer. He growled, laughing, "What are you doing? Shoot me." Orang's face was somewhat serious, but he still pulled the crossbow string tight, scoffing, "If you want it, go ahead." Unfortunately, this time the arrow was caught by the leader. Orang immediately panicked and shouted, "No way!" With a mocking laugh, the leader sneered, "Things like this can't do anything to me." Orang, biting his lip in frustration, furrowed his brows and then attacked, but the leader dodged. By the time he appeared again, he was behind Orang, causing him to panic. Orang couldn't react in time and was pinned to the ground by the leader. He smirked and said, "Don't move, this is my appetizer." Orang struggled desperately, continuously cursing, "Let me go, you crazy bastard." The leader basically ignored him, picked up an arrow from the ground, and without hesitation he slashed a long line on Orang's body. The pain hit him immediately, causing Orang to scream. "What the hell are you doing?" The leader smirked and said, "I love hearing you scream. A delicious dish needs to be accompanied by a good tune, right?" Orang bit his lip fiercely and shouted, "You crazy bastard, just kill me." The leader clicked his tongue twice, smirking. "I never said I would let you live. If you keep making noise, you'll just bite your tongue." He even made a perverted face, licking his lips and saying, "I guess the taste of meat hasn't changed if you only lose your tongue, right?" His words made Orang panic. Not lightly, but he continued to say such disgusting things. "But I guess a delicious prey needs a tongue so I can hear them scream right. I wonder how many parts of your body will fall off." Orang struggled hard, shouting, "Let me go, you bastard, I'll kill you." But the leader was even more excited by the screams. "Good job, scream louder." Just then, a loud bang came from the door behind, catching the leader's attention. He glanced over, puzzled, muttering, "What was that?" Before he could understand what was happening, a beam of energy sliced through the door. Not long after, Xionggu burst in from outside. Upon seeing him, Orang joyfully shouted, "Brother!" Xionggu squinted at the kid and casually asked, "Have you been waiting long?" "Are your hands and feet still intact?" The leader stood up from Orang and clicked his tongue, saying, "Tisk." It's strange how someone interrupts just when we're about to have some fun. Orang immediately nodded in response, regaining his freedom thanks to you, and the old man's car was still intact. He smiled with satisfaction, saying it was a bit difficult to get here. "There's a lot of trash outside the stairs that needs to be cleaned up. After killing, you can come in and talk." Then he lifted his lips to look at the cold leader and said, "You are the last one. What will you do now?" Upon hearing this, the leader immediately became excited and spoke up, "Those bastards want to pay whatever they can. I won't care about them. Instead, I will enjoy the big party tonight." Just as the words left his mouth, his eyes widened in horror because Orang had jumped up and clamped his legs around him. The kid shouted fiercely, "Instead of the party, eat this." Immediately after, the kid stabbed the sharp tip into the leader's neck, fresh blood quickly gushing out the pain, causing him to grit his teeth in anger, cursing, "How dare you!" Orang didn't answer. The kid hurriedly shouted, "Do it now." Xionggu, after hearing that, rushed forward without hesitation and struck a blow to the leader's leg. He was caught off guard, and by the time he realized Xionggu's intention, it was too late. One of the leader's legs was severed, fresh blood began to flow out, and the pain made him curl up on the ground. The leader was so angry he gritted his teeth. "Damn it! You two little brats dared to cut off my leg?" Xionggu snorted lightly and coldly replied, "Your proud leg is now missing half." "What a pity!" The leader glared at him, clearly unhappy, and shouted, "You little dog! That line should be mine to say!" Xionggu said with dissatisfaction, snorting coldly, then raised his sword and struck down. The leader died under his blade at that moment. That voice echoed in Xionggu's head. That's right. Kill the superpower user and seize his power. While he was still confused, a powerful energy surrounded Xionggu's body. Moments later, Xionggu jolted awake, looking around in bewilderment, filled with doubt. "Where am I? What happened?" Just then, Orang walked in from outside, speaking, "You're awake. You suddenly fainted. It scared me." Xionggu looked at him suspiciously and asked, "Did you bring me here?" Orang raised an eyebrow and replied, "Who else?" Xionggu couldn't help but feel amazed, thinking, "You look weak but are surprisingly strong." Then he continued to ask, "What are you planning to do with this car?" Orang was putting things into the trunk while answering, "This is what that bastard took from the East Hook. I found a few precious liters of gasoline here. I will take it all and let those bastards be." After finishing, Orang walked back to the car. The kid directly sat in the driver's seat. Xionggu hesitated and asked, "Do you know how to drive?" Orang casually replied, "I've driven a few abandoned cars before. I hope it will run," saying that the kid tried to turn the key and fortunately it really started. Orang happily exclaimed, "Thank goodness it runs." Then the kid reached out to turn on the music player, excited to see what kind of music those bastards listened to. Immediately, a cheesy voice began to play, making both of them freeze. Seong-gu was stunned, and Arang muttered, "What is this, God?" Seong-gu also helplessly spoke up. Immediately, a cheesy song started playing, causing both of them, CEO-gu and Arang, to freeze. Arang was somewhat speechless, muttering, "What the hell?" CEO-gu also helplessly spoke up. It was a song from an idol group that had made waves before the major upheaval. Those bastards didn't match their appearance at all. Arang quickly pressed the gas and blandly said, "I'm a bit surprised, but the song is okay, let's go." The car quickly left with the cheesy music playing, but not long after Arang saw something. In the distance, a red dot appeared, and CEO-gu couldn't help but be stunned, a signal flare. "It came from your hiding place, right?" Arang's expression became serious as he pursed his lips and said, "Yes, that's a danger signal at our hideout," the boy said, then hurriedly ran towards the Dong base. On the other side of the Dong base, someone rushed in from outside. The girl ran straight to where Jenna was and hurriedly asked, "Is there news from Arang?" The other person hurriedly shook their head, saying there were no monsters suddenly surrounding them, as if an earthquake had just occurred. This made Veena jump up from her seat, and she quickly ran after the other person out to the Mini that was waiting outside. Upon seeing Veena arrive, he turned to look at her, then his expression became somewhat serious as he pointed in that direction. Veena hurriedly took out the binoculars and indeed saw a group of monsters running towards them. Reena's face instantly turned ugly, as if they were trying to escape from something terrifying. But the Mini trembled and reminded her, "It's not underground, it's up above." Reena heard this and immediately adjusted the binoculars, and she saw a monster with 2 large wings appearing. She seemed to recognize it. Her face grew increasingly pale, as if the monster was something very frightening. Reena's body trembled reflexively, her voice filled with extreme fear. Why has that detestable thing that disappeared for many years reappeared? Its appearance resembled that of a demon, a nightmare creature capable of wiping out an entire army of a nation with just one flap of its wings, a rank S monster. Those who had experienced such turmoil like Reena could never forget. That was the monster named Belkist, and right now Belkist swung its axe towards them. Seeing this scene, Reena immediately shouted a warning, but it was too late. One strike from Belkist hit the building, causing it to show signs of collapsing. On the other side, on the way back, Arang's car was speeding away frantically. However, Seong-gu quickly spoke up, "Arang, stop for a moment, that danger signal, what color is it? If it's a mid-level monster, you might still be able to do something." With his newly awakened abilities, he asked what the red signal meant. Does it mean a monster above mid-level? After hearing this, Arang pursed his lips and replied, "That signal means a disaster-level monster has appeared, which means you should run without looking back." Seong-gu fell silent for a long time after hearing this, then finally spoke, "Stop the car?" But Arang disagreed, pursing his lips and muttering, "I don't want to, I want to go back." Seong-gu, horrified, advised, "A disaster-level monster is not something humanity can confront. Don't you know why the signal flare was shot up? Even if you go there, it won't change anything. We have to leave here." Unfortunately, Arang was very stubborn. He shook his head and replied, "No, I have to go there, even if it's just to save one person." Just then, a group of monsters ran towards them from a distance, making both of their faces look somewhat grim. Were they running away because they saw the disaster-level monster? While they were still confused, the monsters had thrown the vehicle of the 2 people, Mr. Gu and Arang, causing it to spin several times, leaving them in a passive position. Ignoring the fact that he was spinning inside the vehicle, Mr. Gu waited until the car finally stopped for a while before opening his eyes, letting out a soft gasp and glancing around. Mr. Gu tried to crawl out of the car but couldn't see Arang anywhere. He frowned and muttered to himself about how long he had been unconscious. "Where is Arang? Don't tell me he walked home." Then he pushed against the car, channeling energy into his hands. With his effort, the car was lifted up quickly, and Mr. Gu managed to push the vehicle back to normal. After that, he sat in the driver's seat, started the engine, and prepared to leave. Mr. Gu only hoped that Arang wouldn't blame him. Surviving in this desolate area was his top priority. If he didn't survive, everything would come to an end. When the disaster level was leveled in other areas on the ground, Seong-gu had to inform Area 17 about this first before leaving. Suddenly, he remembered the first time he went to the copper base, there was also a little girl, Minnie, who helped him get weapons. Mr. Gu sat there in silence. He furrowed his brow, angrily cursing under his breath. "Damn it! On the other hand, Arang had run straight back to the copper base, but when he arrived, his expression immediately turned grim. Corpses were scattered everywhere. Almost everyone was dead, and the surroundings had turned into a pile of rubble. Just then, a noise suddenly came from behind Arang. He turned around in panic and saw Rena lying there covered in blood. Arang hurriedly ran to her side. Rena tried to raise her hand with her last breath, but before she could touch Arang, she fell down helplessly. Arang immediately felt heartbroken and cried out loud. He held Jenna's body sorrowfully, murmuring, "Don't wake up, sister." Just then, while Arang was distracted, something silently appeared from behind. Noticing the movement, he glanced back and saw a giant monster right in front of him, Belkist, with its 6 green eyes fixed intently on him. Arang's face instantly changed. Belkist was about to pounce on him, its head spinning continuously with extremely frightening eyes. Arang could do nothing but tremble and mumble for help. But at this moment, who could save him? The Belkist suddenly stopped. It was very close to Arang. Just a swing of its hand and he would be done for, but it just stood there staring at Arang in confusion. A moment later, a large hole suddenly appeared in the sky. Bellatrix looked up at the hole. Then it lifted its wings and flew up. In an instant, it was near the hole in the sky. Arang stared at it for a long time, still in a daze. But then he breathed a sigh of relief. Although he didn't know what had happened, he was still alive. Thinking about it, he glanced at Jenna. She had stopped breathing and showed no signs of life. Arang helplessly sighed and went over to close her eyes so she could rest in peace. Closing his eyes, he sorrowfully murmured, "Sister, I'm sorry I couldn't avenge you." He continued to hold Jenna's body and cried for a long time. After that, Arang went down to the basement of the copper base. He seemed to be searching for survivors, but after searching for a long time, all he found were ruins and corpses. Everyone at the base was dead. What about Mini Arang couldn't find little Sako? Just then, he spotted a refrigerator nearby. The strangest thing was that the food in the refrigerator was all outside. Arang seemed to think of a possibility and hurriedly ran over. He nervously grasped the refrigerator door handle and sure enough saw Minnie sitting inside. Arang joyfully exclaimed, "Minnie, it's you!" The little girl, seeing him, was also overjoyed and shed tears. Minnie jumped into Arang's arms and he patted her head, comforting her. "I'm so glad you're alive." Arang happily shouted, "Minnie, it's you!" The little girl saw him and joyfully burst into tears, rushing into Arang's arms. Arang patted her head, comforting her. "I'm so glad you're still alive." The next day, Arang carried Minnie step by step out of the dark basement. Just then, a beam of light suddenly shone into Arang's eyes, and the boy turned to look. He immediately saw Xionggu leaning against the car not far away. Arang's face showed a look of surprise, and Xionggu, seeing the two kids, let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, he was still safe. Arang, carrying Minnie, walked up to Xionggu and happily said, "You're here." Xionggu nodded and slowly opened his mouth. "I saw the door moving from a distance. Is anyone else alive?" Arang helplessly sighed and replied, "It's just me and Minnie left." Xionggu couldn't help but be stunned. He asked in confusion, "What happened? Did you guys survive and escape from that guy?" Upon hearing this, Arang's face changed and he stammered, "I ran into that guy," but he just looked at me and then walked away. Xionggu fell into silence after hearing this, just like when he endured the black mantis. Could it just be a coincidence? After thinking for a moment, Xionggu asked Arang, "What are you planning to do now? Do you have somewhere to go?" Arang fell silent upon hearing this. Seeing the boy not answering, Xionggu suggested, "If so, do you want to try being a guide?" Arang was taken aback and didn't rush to answer. Xionggu slowly persuaded him, "If I go back, I plan to form my own hunting team, so I'm looking for members, Minnie. As a magical engineer, you can be the guide. How about coming with me?" Arang thought for a while before hesitantly saying, "I'm not sure if I can do well. But if you take me anywhere, even if it's just a little—" Saying this, his face suddenly turned red, which made Xionggu dissatisfied and scold him, "Don't keep stuttering like that. I really hate that kind of mushy stuff." Then the three of them got in the car and returned to Area 17. Xionggu explained as they walked, "There are many subordinate areas, and I belong to Area 17. The branch manager is a man named Kim Busick. He looks like an old man, but is still young. You don't need to feel awkward." Just then, Minnie suddenly exclaimed, "What is that?" Xionggu looked over at what the girl was pointing to, which was a tall pole. He slowly explained, "That's an energy conversion device. We collect methane gas from decomposing waste in landfills and convert it into energy." Hearing Xionggu's tone, Minnie felt a bit awkward and spoke up. Wait, can you speak more casually? I'm even younger than you, Arang. Xionggu still politely replied, I'll do that. With curiosity, Minnie quickly set that aside. Her eyes brightened as she smiled and said, compared to that, I'm more amazed by using waste to create energy. Can I take a look? Xionggu didn't think much and casually replied, sure. Area 17 is also nearby. Arang, sitting in the passenger seat, just listened and chimed in. After a while, Xionggu drove the two kids to a small stone pole by the roadside. As soon as she saw it, Minnie became excited. Then she gently closed her eyes, focused her mind, and in an instant, her body emitted a layer of energy. Minnie reached out with both hands to touch the stone pole. Xionggu, seeing this action, understood. She is grasping the operating principles of the machinery in an instant. Is this the ability of a magical engineer? A moment later, Xionggu and Minnie were continuously chatting the conversation, revolving around the grassy field in front of them, with one person asking and the other responding in perfect harmony just at that moment. Arang suddenly spoke up. Chen, I'm really sorry for interrupting your fun conversation, but could you please be quiet for a bit? This made the other two look at her in confusion, and Arang squinted her eyes at them. She then spotted a deer hiding in the grass. As she spoke, she pulled back the bowstring in her hand, and as soon as she finished her sentence, she began to aim and shoot an arrow that whizzed through the air in an instant. Unfortunately, the arrow grazed the deer's leg and plunged straight into the ground, causing it to quickly run away. Arang, frustrated, shouted, "Damn it, the wind threw me off course." Just as she finished speaking, a figure zipped past her. It was Xionggu, who used his superpowers to dash away in an instant. His gaze was always fixed on the deer. At the same time, he drew out his dagger, and his speed was so fast that it was invisible to the naked eye. In a flash, he caught up with the deer, not wasting a second. Xionggu stabbed the dagger into its body, cutting the deer's throat, causing it to die instantly. After finishing this task, Xionggu slowly returned, carrying the large deer on his back. Upon seeing this, Arang immediately exclaimed, "Wow, that was fast." "How did you do that?" "That's amazing." Arang felt that his running style was very familiar, as if she knew what he was thinking. Xionggu reached out to pat her head softly, reassuring her, "I know what you're thinking. You don't need to worry. When the time is right, I will tell you. But I hope you can keep this a secret between us." Arang hesitated for a moment before finally nodding in agreement. Xionggu could tell that she was thinking about enhancing her speed like the leader. He also had an awareness when using his powers, but now Xionggu was reviewing the sketch of his abilities. Absorbing the powers of others and turning them into his own abilities, he truly had an unreasonable power in his hands. While he was pondering, Minnie's voice suddenly rang out, "It's a windmill." "It's the first time I've seen a windmill." Xionggu and Arang looked at the girl, their faces showing a hint of helplessness. Minnie didn't think much and began to concentrate on absorbing the energy from the windmill. Xionggu couldn't help but feel emotional. He had discovered a remarkable talent. The fact that Minnie was still alive was indeed a significant gain. At this moment, Minnie seemed to have finished her task. Turning to the two, Xionggu cheerfully said, "Can I meet the person in charge of managing the windmill?" Xionggu nodded slightly and replied, "Yes. If you go to Area 17, you can meet the person in charge." Hearing this, the girl excitedly suggested, "Let's go quickly. It can significantly increase the electricity output of the windmill." The more Xionggu looked, the more he felt emotional. He knew someone like that. "Do all researchers have such faces?" He glanced at Arang beside him, who nonchalantly replied, "Often." The three then got back in the vehicle and headed to Area 17. A few hours later, the vehicle finally stopped. Xionggu looked outside and spoke, "This is Area 17. Arang looked at the architecture in front of her and couldn't help but exclaim, "The building is so big." As Xionggu stepped out of the vehicle, he explained, "Before the Great Disaster, this place was used as a sports stadium. Let's stop by the trading point first." After saying that, he led the two kids into a room. Jimmy saw him and immediately shouted, "Xionggu, what's going on? What happened? Who are those kids?" Xionggu waved to greet him, "Long time no see." Jimmy hurriedly called for Busick to report to the area chief. "Xionggu is here with two kids. Sir, please come quickly." Xionggu led the way to the seats, and the two kids sat down as well. After reporting, Jemmy brought tea for them and then breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank goodness you returned safely. I was very surprised when I received contact from the hawk hunter in Mr. Gu's car, hesitatingly mumbling about contacting Gang Myung. So did you hear what happened?" Hearing this, Jamie, feeling dissatisfied, opened his mouth to say not to speak any more upon hearing the news of the captain's death. Do you know how shocked the area chief was? The whole car of Mr. Gu also became like that, and a weapon was discovered 2 kilometers from the scene. Upon hearing this, Mr. Gu was stunned while Jamie, not noticing his expression, continued to speak. They say fingerprints couldn't be found, so the culprit hasn't been caught yet. At this moment, Mr. Gu breathed a sigh of relief, speeding away for about 2 kilometers. The cognitive ability is truly amazing, but not being able to find fingerprints is very strange. Therefore, he suspected that Marie was placing too much hope in him. While Seong-gu was thinking, Jamie was still talking. If you leave Gangmyeong, you have to go home early, right? We thought you were dead since you didn't come. Mr. Gu looked at the 2 kids, Arang, and slowly explained that there was a bit of a matter related to those kids. At this point, he suddenly stood up and seriously suggested that since we're talking, I have information I want to sell. Come to your office for a moment. Hearing this, Jamie, feeling dissatisfied, scolded what this kid really at this moment doesn't care and walked straight to the door while speaking. What can we do now that someone is dead? I will return safely. Also, it relates to the reason I came back late. Jeremy frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Is that so? If you say that, then the information must be valuable." Right after that, the 2 went to Jeremy's office, where she finally asked suspiciously, "What exactly is going on with you?" CEO Gu cautiously looked around for a long time before quietly asking, "Do you know if there is a shelter in Mokdong? That place was destroyed and the people were completely wiped out." Jimmy casually replied, "Nothing special when a shelter disappears in the wilderness." What high-level information? It's just that she hadn't finished speaking when Seong-gu coldly interrupted. "Belkis has appeared." This immediately stunned Cho Demi, and after a moment she reacted trembling as she asked Belkis, "Are you sure?" "Except for the Great Flood, Belkis has never appeared on the Korean peninsula." CEO Gu firmly replied, "I am sure of that. Besides the 2 kids and me, everyone at the Mokdong Center and the group of murderers were all killed by Belkis." The more Jimmy listened, the more panicked he became, quickly waving his hand to stop. "Wait a minute, speak slowly." Then she spoke while hitting the documents on the machine, noting that she never liked those murderous bastards. But in the end, it turned into food for Belkis. So why didn't Seong-gu answer? The reality is a bit different, but never mind, just ignore it. You have a lot to worry about already. At this moment, Jamie again asked suspiciously, "So what happened to Belkis?" Seong-gu casually replied, "After destroying the center, it disappeared through the spatial portal." Jimmy frowned and spoke in a deep voice. "The people in Mokdong are really unlucky, but looking at it from another perspective, it's fortunate that not many people were killed." CEO Gu slowly opened his mouth. Jimmy frowned upon hearing this and spoke in a serious tone. "The people in Mokdong are really unfortunate, but looking at it from another angle, it's fortunate that not many were killed." CEO Gu slowly opened his mouth. "I also have information about Belkis's movement, although it's just a hypothesis." Jimmy frowned and murmured, "But it's a hypothesis from a survivor who encountered that beast. That's still very valuable." Seong-gu thought for a long time before speaking. "It seems Belkis has used body temperature to track human locations." This made Jamie horrified and wide-eyed. She exclaimed in shock, "Is there any evidence to support that hypothesis?" Seong-gu calmly explained, "That's why the children are still alive. They hid in an abandoned refrigerator." Jimmy typed while speaking, "This information will be very useful when fighting Belkis in the future." Damn Mac nodded. CEO Gu raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, "If you can pay a fair price for this information, then that would be great." Now Jamie thought for a long time before speaking. If it's information at this level, then the minimum price would be 40 energy cores. Seong-gu raised an eyebrow and laughed. "Level S pays quite well, huh? So instead of energy cores, I want to buy some information corresponding to that amount." Jamie asked doubtfully, "I have no reason to refuse. What do you want to know?" Seong-gu casually said, "I want to find a solo superpower who can lead a team." Hearing this, Jamie couldn't help but furrow her brow and asked, "Why don't you try to find a superpower team that is looking for a guide?" Seong-gu replied indifferently, "If I wanted to do that, then I wouldn't need to trade 40 energy cores, would I?" Jimmy, even more confused after hearing this, asked then why. CEO Gu hesitated for a long time before answering, "I have awakened." Jimmy was immediately stunned. Seong-gu continued, "Only the branch manager, and you know about this." Demi stared at him in shock, and when she finally reacted, she stammered, "I understand now." "Congratulations, what is your skill level?" Seong-gu casually replied, "It's the ability to enhance the body at around level 15. Jimmy's eyes widened in shock, exclaiming, "Level 15? That's a mid-level superpower, right?" Seong-gu shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure yet because I haven't properly tested it." Jimmy, upon hearing this, slumped down in her chair. She looked at him in panic, unable to believe it, exclaiming, "Oh my God, the best guide in District 17 is now a mid-level superpower," just as she was saying this. She suddenly thought of something. Stunned, she opened her mouth. "So this is the reason why you want to create your own team at the center?" "Damn." Mac nodded. Xionggu casually replied, "That's right. I was also planning to recruit those other kids." Jamie looked at him intently, hesitating to speak. The Marlin team is the key team that has been shattered like that, and guide Kim Seong-gu has awakened too. More importantly, Seong-gu wants to lead a new team. She thought the branch manager would finally have a little less responsibility. A moment later in Busick's office, seeing Seong-gu, he took off his glasses and cheerfully said, "Come in. It's been a while, right? This world changes too fast." Even his friends, the ones he thought would be with him forever, have left. Jamie sighed helplessly after hearing this, but very quickly after that. Busick changed his tone, laughing and saying, "And that crafty little brat has finally grown up." Seong-gu couldn't help but feel sentimental upon hearing this. It seems like a once energetic person has now grown old. "It's already 1:30 right." Busick laughed loudly for 2 seconds and said, "That's why I told you not to cause trouble for me anymore, but honestly, do I look older than my age?" As soon as those words were spoken, the atmosphere fell into silence, and Busick couldn't help but feel dissatisfied, snorting and scolding that brat. Not answering is even scarier. CEO Gu remained silent after hearing this, and Busick sighed helplessly, saying, "I'm very glad you returned safely, but the important thing is, have you awakened?" After saying that, he narrowed his eyes at Gu's car. Gu hesitated for a moment before nodding and replying, "That's right." Busick frowned slightly and spoke in a serious tone, "I understand now. Finally you said it." He suddenly stopped, making Gu feel puzzled. After pondering for a moment, Busick suspiciously asked, "By the way, are you planning to hide that?" Gu nodded slightly and replied, "Yes, I only want Jemmy and the branch manager to know that I have awakened." Busick thought for a moment before speaking. "Managing superpowered individuals is done very carefully by the headquarters, so I really don't understand why you want to keep that a secret." He asked, "Does that mean Seong-gu doesn't trust?" Not Seong-gu clicked his tongue and pouted, saying, "Because the hero who accepted me is the branch manager, not anyone else." Not couldn't help but smile, and Busick shyly spoke up, "Kid, you sure know how to say cheesy things. All right, then. By the way, are you planning to bring those 2 kids along?" Gu casually replied, "That's right. I'm planning to recruit them as members of my team, and I will also teach them to become guides and fighters." After saying that, he pointed at Orang, praising that kid for being very talented. Busick looked over at Minnie and asked, "What about the other girl?" He slowly introduced her as a magical engineer, which made Demi gasp in surprise. A magical engineer. Even Busick was no exception. He chuckled in amazement, saying, "I never expected you could bring back a magical engineer." After that, he glanced at Gu and asked, "So you intend to hide that girl in your team so that Not won't take her to create attack artifacts?" Gu looked a bit surprised. He raised an eyebrow and smiled, saying, "That's indeed what a manager would think." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly paused, then firmly stated, "And if our team can take on missions, then I want to take on additional assassination missions." This made Busick's face change. Then he laughed and said, "I can't believe you want to hunt people. It seems I've lived too long in this world." Seong-gu didn't say much. He slowly stood up coldly, opening his mouth like a lord would at that moment. This world is changing rapidly. As soon as he finished speaking, Seong-gu glanced at Jamie and said, "By the way, Jamie, can you gather everyone in Area 17? Jamie looked at him in confusion and asked, "Really, everyone in the entire area?" He nodded slightly and replied, "Uh-huh," so right after that. In the yard of Area 17, everyone had almost gathered. Gu was leading everyone, holding their hands, and despite their confusion, he continued to do his work. CEO Gu held their hands, closed his eyes, seemingly feeling something. The people in front basically didn't understand what he was doing and could only look at him in confusion. CEO Gu coldly spoke, "Thank you, you can go now." Then he called the next person, still the same. Seong-gu held the other person's hand. Just at that moment, a woman, irritated, spoke up, "What on earth are you all doing? Why did you naturally call these busy people here?" Jemmy saw the woman getting angry and quickly took my arm to reassure me. "I'm sorry, even if it's uncomfortable. Please bear with it for a moment." The Ongu vehicle, on the other hand, continued to call the next person without paying attention. The woman then pushed the person in front of her aside, snorted and scolded, "Get out of the way!" She stood in front of the Ongu vehicle and coldly spoke. "Hurry up, what do you want to do?" Ongu saw the woman in front of him and awkwardly said, "I'm sorry for my rudeness." Then he reached out and grabbed her hand. Just at that moment, both of them were stunned. After reacting, the woman pushed Onggu's hand away and dissatisfiedly asked, "What the hell are you doing?" Xionggu didn't answer. He was dazed and speechless. Is this girl a superhuman? By the time he reacted, he thought, is this girl a superhuman? The girl slightly changed her expression and after a while extended her hand asking, what? Do you want me to give you my hand again? Regardless of whether I feel strange or anything else, CEO Gu still didn't answer and continued to hold her hand. He gently closed his eyes, concentrating, and at that moment the voice echoed in his head. Kill her, and take that source of power. CEO Gu was immediately stunned. He was horrified, his eyes wide open. Xionggu's head began to ache, causing him to tremble, making the girl confused. The woman's face quickly changed color. After hesitating for a long time, she awkwardly said, "Could it be that you like me? I can hardly breathe anymore." Jamie, who was behind, looked a bit confused and asked, "What are you all doing?" CEO Gu narrowed his eyes and suspiciously asked her, "Are you interested in hunting monsters or have you ever tried it?" The woman pouted at him. "Oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. It looks interesting. But that flirting thing is too lame." Onggu frowned thoughtfully. He was sure he had heard that voice. She is indeed a superhuman, but her attitude isn't very good. He thought this was a great opportunity to find a contestant for the team, but unfortunately, perhaps he should give up searching for someone in Area 17. Thinking that Onggu spoke loudly, "I'm sorry, but you can all go home now. That's all for today. Thank you all for your cooperation." The group upon hearing this looked confused and didn't understand anything. Just at that moment, a sultry voice suddenly rang out, "Wait!" causing Onggu to be stunned. The girl walked over and lifted his chin with her finger, smiling seductively as she said, "You called all these busy people here and took away all their precious time, so don't you have to give a reason afterward?" Onggu narrowed his eyes at her. This girl seemed very inexperienced, not considering her position and going too far. Thinking that, he coldly replied, "Aren't you acting like this? Because you know I belong to the note, right? Didn't you learn that to survive in the wilderness you must know your place?" Hearing this, the woman couldn't help but smile. "What, so you're a member of the note?" Just then, a group of people rushed over anxiously, asking, "Sister-in-law, are you okay?" CEO Gu glanced at Jamie and asked, "Who are those useless people?" Jamie quietly replied, "Do you know the hunter Kang Hun-soo? They are his subordinates." At this moment, the girl raised her eyebrow and said, "Oh my, I want to enjoy a little more time with you, but my man is too loyal." The other two didn't care and continued talking. "Jamie said this girl is Kang Hun-soo's wife." Xionggu frowned and asked, "Isn't he supposed to be kicked out?" Jamie casually replied, "That's right, but the branch manager doesn't need to." After Jamie finished speaking, Xionggu guessed and squinted at the woman. He sighed helplessly, thinking that he was being overly lenient in the wrong situation. Xionggu then spoke up, "I already said that earlier. What kind of backing do you have that makes you act like this? How long do you think Kang Hun-soo will remain loyal to you?" This statement made the subordinates of Hun-soo furious, rushing forward. The guy grabbed Xionggu by the collar and aggressively questioned, "This bastard is really too much. Take back what you just said to my sister-in-law right now." Xionggu narrowed his eyes at the guy secretly cursing this bastard in his heart. Why are these guys so easily crossing the line? Meanwhile, an arrow had pierced the hand of that guy, causing Cho to scream in pain. "What the hell is going on?" The woman of Hun-soo also angrily shouted, "Who did that?" From a nearby rooftop, a pair of legs appeared. It was Arang, who had a bow in his hand. He looked down proudly and warned fiercely, "If you don't want to die, back off. If you dare to do anything outrageous like laying a hand on my brother, I will shoot you right away." Yemi saw Arang and Mini and exclaimed in shock, "Wait, why are those kids here?" Xionggu was equally stunned. The woman was now very angry and ordered, "They're just two kids, pull them down here." The group immediately rushed forward, but unfortunately they could only take 2 steps before an arrow shot from afar, embedding itself in the ground glowing red. Seeing it, the group was immediately terrified and shouted, "It's a core bullet, get down!" At that moment, the red light suddenly brightened, but they waited for a long time and nothing happened. The woman angrily scolded, "You fools, that's fake." Arang, high above, saw their reaction and laughed even more, saying, "That was fake, but this one is real." However, the woman still didn't believe it and quickly ordered, "Even if they have real core bullets, they can't explode at the exchange center. Get your spirits up." Arang sneered, "Look, that's not the one." Minnie, hearing him, immediately responded, "Yes," then bowed her head and took something out. The woman's group panicked at the girl's actions, shouting, "What is that?" Even Jamie was very surprised, wide-eyed, exclaiming, "Where did she get that from?" Minnie pulled out a cannon and aimed it straight at the group. Arang stood beside her, boasting, "Now let's see what happens." The woman's group immediately feared and stepped back, knowing they were in trouble. The woman pointed and scolded, "You two little brats! I will find you later, go ahead." Arang provocatively stuck out his tongue, making the woman frustrated as she left with her people muttering, "They really are stupid hitting those uncultured brats." "Living in a remote area doesn't bring any benefits," Jamie said coldly, "as if you have any education." Xionggu said nothing. He looked worriedly at the two kids and asked, "Are you two okay?" Arang and Minnie winked to express that they were fine. Mr. Gu's car helplessly held his head, not expecting that the two of them would be such a trouble. The road ahead would be difficult. A moment later in Busik's room, Jamie came to report. After hearing, Busik nodded and replied, "I understand now, so that's how it is." Jamie, seeing this, curiously asked, "What do you think Mr. Gu's car is looking for?" Busik casually replied, "It's possible that he's looking for some useful superpowered individuals for his team." Jamie questioned again, "Superpowered individuals?" He also said he was looking for me, but why? Busik casually responded, "It seems that's still not enough for him, and it appears that some superpowered individuals have yet to awaken." She continued to ask, "But how can he distinguish between superpowered individuals and ordinary people?" Busik thought for a moment before answering, "I've heard that superpowered individuals can sense a different feeling from other superpowered individuals." Jamie found it quite hard to believe and frowned, asking again, "Really?" Indifferently shrugging, Busik said nonchalantly, "Anyway, Xionggu has come up with a good idea. I didn't expect him to use that ability as a tool to distinguish people." Jimmy, after hearing this, still hesitated to speak up. "But there's no need to summon Shinjun." Busik frowned and asked, "What's wrong? Is it because of her wicked personality or her behavior?" Jimmy thought for a moment before answering, "That's also a major reason, but the important thing is, she's living a life without fighting." Busik frowned at her and sighed, saying, "How do we know what others have gone through? Take Mr. Gu's car as an example. Hasn't he become a superpowered individual?" Jimmy was stunned upon hearing this. It made a lot of sense. Busik, not paying attention to her reaction, continued to smile and said, "Speaking of Xionggu, I think I should help him a bit to develop faster. Let's get ready for the next phase." The next day, in the desolate land, Xionggu and the two kids Arang were here. Xionggu glanced at Minnie and asked, "Have you prepared the flag?" The girl nodded slightly and replied, "Yes." Xionggu lowered his voice and instructed, "It would be best if we don't have to use it. But if needed, you must not hesitate and use it immediately, okay?" Minnie immediately accepted the order, then he reminded her a bit more, "You've calculated the exact radius right. You must not use the gun carelessly like last time. Otherwise, you'll shoot me too." While he was talking, Arang suddenly shouted. He saw someone coming out from the smoke and quickly called out, "Hey, over there!" Xionggu heard and turned his gaze, really seeing three figures coming from the other side towards them. He frowned slightly and remained silent. "Are they hunters? Don't tell me they have no good intentions." Thinking, Xionggu curiously asked, "Besides Jamie, does anyone else know we are training here?" Minnie shook her head slightly and replied, "I didn't tell anyone." The three of them, Xionggu, felt a bit confused as they waited for those people to come out. The closer they got, the more serious Xionggu's expression became. Arang glanced at him and asked if it was someone from the Kang family. "He's the ex-husband of the woman from before." Xionggu frowned slightly, thinking for a long time, before shaking his head to deny it's not him. Minnie then curiously asked again, "Then who is it?" "You know all the hunters around here." CEO Gu nodded slightly, saying, "That's right, but this is the first time we've met." Just then, three strangers approached from a distance. One of them raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, "The atmosphere here is a bit strange, isn't it?" CEO Gu stood in front of the two kids, warily looking at the three people, and asked in a serious tone, "Excuse me, who are you? Please clarify your identities." One of them heard this question. He shyly scratched his head, hesitating for a long time before answering, "That's a tough question." "We are on a secret mission. You are the newly formed hunting group in Area 17, right?" Upon hearing this, Xionggu was stunned. "Who are they, and how do they know about this?" The other person, seeing his reaction, couldn't help but laugh, teasing, "You guys look just like cute little kittens with your fur all puffed up." As soon as the words left his mouth, Arang stepped forward, blocking Xionggu's path, and the boy warned fiercely, "Back off! Watch your words before I tear your mouth apart." The other person heard the boy's words and scoffed, then turned and ran away. This action made Arang panic and step back. In the blink of an eye, the other person appeared in front of Arang, raising an eyebrow and smiling. "I've never seen this dish before. Is it the type of arrow that uses a core?" Saying that, he glanced at the arrows behind Arang, unable to help but admire the miraculous technique. Just then, the man's eyes suddenly narrowed. Arang had drawn a dagger and pointed it at the man's throat without him realizing it. The boy coldly warned, "Hey, old man, if you touch someone else's weapon, you might be in for some trouble." The man was a bit taken aback, but quickly reacted, raising his hands in surrender and laughing. "Ha ha, I was just about to stop anyway." "Let's keep it friendly then." The girl behind them snorted disdainfully. "Why act so dangerous?" Seonggu, standing behind, frowned. They were laughing, but Arang was in danger. He completely ignored the sword-drawing stance of the person behind him. Moreover, the guy with the ponytail might be the leader. His voice was louder than his stature. Seonggu was sure these weren't ordinary people. Why did they appear in front of him? At this moment, the leader spoke again. "Considering the reaction so far, I guess old man Kim Busik hasn't said anything yet, right?" Seonggu couldn't help but be stunned and asked in doubt. "You know the branch manager?" The other person asked, surprised. "This is the first time I've heard of it. Anyway, I have a preference for grumpy old men, so I plan to make a proper introduction. Let me introduce them. They are the secret society of Area 17. Seonggu was taken aback. "Besides you, there is a secret society." Seeing his reaction, the other person continued. "It's no surprise the branch manager has hidden it so thoroughly. After all, everyone knows that the only woman among the three of them has introduced me. I am Kwonsena," she said, pointing at the silent young man behind her. "This is Kim Hun. He only speaks when ordered, so feel free to give him commands." At this moment, the other person smiled and said, "And I am the leader, Lee Jae-seong. Our group is called Kodu. Let's help each other out." Jeonggu heard the name and was even more confused. It was a strange name. Isn't this a medical term that appears when a patient goes into cardiac arrest? But quickly he set that aside and greeted me, saying, "I'm Kim Seonggu. We call ourselves the Team Carnivorous." Ji-sung, upon hearing that, asked suspiciously where that name came from. "It's from carnivorous," Seonggu explained slowly. Ji-sung, even more surprised, asked, "It means meat-eating right." Hearing such a cool name, Seonggu said nothing. The group name also represented his ability, meaning to devour the powers of others. Sena then laughed and said the group name sounded good. "At least it sounds better than Code Blue." Seonggu asked in confusion, "Why Code Blue?" Before Sena could answer, Kim Hoon slowly spoke up, saying they originally intended to just call it Blue. Leader Jae-seong said it didn't sound good, so they added a word from somewhere. They attached it only to find out it was just a medical term. Ji-sung, upon hearing this, was dissatisfied and scolded them. Only at times like this did he get messy without needing to give orders, but Sena didn't hold back at all and laughed at the misfortune of others, saying, "God blue cardiac arrest, emergency, emergency." This made Ji-sung furious. "If you keep joking around when we get back to the city, I won't share any good food anymore." Jeonggu listened to their constant noise and felt a bit speechless. He was recalling his own situation before starting training. Jeonggu had approached Busik to talk. The two stood outside on the balcony and he quietly asked, "Don't you think it's a bit too much?" Busik shook his head slightly and replied, No matter how you put it, it still sounds better than the name Swordfish. I never expected that name would be chosen." Seonggu was slightly taken aback upon hearing this. Busik looked off into the distance for a long time before speaking. For a normal guide, a magic engineer would be a bit lacking in balancing the members. There needs to be someone for close combat. CEO Gu analyzed this. He couldn't help but feel impressed. Truly, he was worthy of being the area manager. Busik, not paying attention to this flattery, spoke casually. "It seems you've asked Jamie to find members, right? But finding awakened individuals without a team is tough," said CEO Gu, unable to hide his disappointment. "I can wait as long as I can recruit trustworthy members." Busik, leaning against the wall, hesitated for a moment before speaking. "In a month, there will be a base in Bukhan that will be taken down." CEO Gu exclaimed in surprise. "What?" Busik slowly explained. "There is an awakened individual with abilities there. Try to bring that person back to the team." Upon hearing this, Seonggu asked suspiciously, "How do you have the ability to predict the future?" Busik couldn't help but smile and joked, "Ha ha, I've never had that ability. If I did, I wouldn't have let that kid Chansu lose his life." Jeonggu felt sad when Busik mentioned Chansu. He apologetically said, "I'm sorry." Busik declined to comment and smiled, asking, I heard you're training with them. Xionggu nodded slightly, admitting yes. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. Because your awakening is slow, I was a bit worried, but after seeing your will, I feel relieved. CEO Gu squinted at him and casually said, Don't say that. It seems you knew I would awaken. Busick just laughed casually. Ha, maybe. I said I don't have the ability to predict the future, didn't I? CEO Gu couldn't help but wonder. Although it had been somewhat vague until now, it seemed he knew what was about to happen. While he was thinking, Busick spoke again. It's great if you can form a complete team. You must seize this opportunity. CEO Gu asked in astonishment, What else needs to be done? Busick laughed loudly twice, then mysteriously said, Ha, if you knew beforehand it wouldn't be interesting. Return to reality. The more Xionggu thought about it, the more confused he became. This secret meeting indeed seemed like he knew beforehand. Sometimes not knowing where the endpoint was truly frightening. At that moment, Jisung spoke up again. Although we came to help you with basic training, if you feel it's not effective after it's done, you must join our group. He then raised an eyebrow and asked with a smile, How about that? If you're not confident, you can stop now. CEO Gu squinted at Jisung, falling into deep thought, unsure of the area manager's intentions, but it was very fitting. A rare opportunity must be fully utilized. After thinking, you lowered your voice and said, How can we compete? You have to face the consequences to understand. Right hearing this, Jiseong couldn't help but chuckle. That's quite ambitious. Then let's first show us your basic skills. Xionggu snorted coldly and said, Then let's see carefully what we've practiced. Saying that, he glanced at Arang, who nodded in understanding, then reached into his pocket to pull something out. After that, he poured the liquid onto the ground, and the smell immediately wafted out, causing all three of them, Jisung, to cover their noses. Arang, seeing this reaction, curled his lips in disdain. Is this the first time you've smelled the stench of a rotting monster's corpse? How rude. Seong immediately pulled the other two a bit further away, mumbling, What a terrible smell. Xionggu ignored them and moved to the back, ordering the two kids to take their positions. Arang immediately nodded in acknowledgement, while the three of Jisung observed and couldn't help but speak up. What are they going to show us? Just then, the ground suddenly shook violently, and Xionggu's expression changed as he warned, It's coming, get ready. As soon as he finished speaking, Arang and Minnie immediately took their positions, their spirits heightened. After waiting for a while, Xionggu shouted loudly, It's here, Scatter! The group of Jisung stood behind observing. Senna curiously asked, What are they up to? Jisung had no idea what the three of Xionggu were planning, while Xionggu began to summon his energy. At the same time, something was moving underground. In an instant, that thing burst through the ground, and the three of Jisung were stunned to see a gigantic, ugly worm emerging. In the blink of an eye, it revealed its entire massive body above the ground. Xionggu drew his blade, his body surrounded by energy. He knew this worm had two ways to attack. The first way is, it burrows through the ground and swallows its target on the surface, and the second way is, it jumps into the sky and swallows its target while falling and then continues to dig back underground. Although its movements on the surface can be predicted, its movements underground are unpredictable. To increase his chances of winning, Xionggu needed to kill it before it went underground. With this in mind, he charged towards the ugly worm. He slid across the ground, sliding all the way to its belly, then struck down with his blade into the worm's belly. Seeing this, Senna exclaimed in shock, Did he just go through it? Yisung was also surprised, exclaiming, That's right, but it's too close. Just then, the worm suddenly flicked its tail and burrowed underground. Xionggu frowned slightly. Is this a failure? Just then, there was the sudden movement behind him. He glanced back to see the ugly worm charging from behind, but when it was spotted, it had already burrowed underground. Seeing this, Xionggu shouted loudly. Right now, Arang immediately responded, then drew his bow and shot arrows, each one slicing through the air and piercing straight into the worm's belly. In an instant, the worm's belly exploded. The group of Jisung observing from afar couldn't help but exclaim, So that's how he used it. Senna raised an eyebrow and laughed, saying, I wonder how he managed to get an energy core to explode like that inside an arrow. Xionggu had no idea what they were thinking. He dove from the air and directly stabbed his blade into the belly of the ugly worm. Xionggu had no idea what they were thinking. He dove from the sky and directly stabbed a dagger into the belly of that ugly worm. After that, Xionggu jumped off its back and aimed again, shooting another arrow that pierced the belly of that worm. Next, it emitted a loud explosion. Yeseung, seeing this scene, couldn't help but admire his shooting skills, saying it was amazing, and Senna nodded in agreement. He really is skilled. However, his firepower is still too weak, Yeseung said casually. She was right. After a close-range attack, he recovered and launched a long-range strike. I like the way he thinks. However, these small attacks would only make the monster furious. At that moment, Seong-gu suddenly shouted, "Minnie, the worm's attack pattern is changing." He ordered the girl to prepare. Once it goes underground, they would miss it. Minnie immediately nodded in acknowledgement and then took out a handgun. She aimed at the worm. Senna, from a distance, looked at the gun in her hand, puzzled, murmuring, "What is that small gun?" Indifferently shrugging, Yeseung pouted and said, "Who knows, maybe it's an energy core gun." Just then, the worm began to burrow into the ground, and Seong-gu shouted loudly, "Minnie, it's running away!" Minnie frowned slightly, muttering, "I won't let you escape," and then opened fire. The energy bullet shot out at lightning speed. It struck the worm's body. Immediately, the bullet exploded. Minnie, sitting on the ground, saw this and joyfully exclaimed, "I hit it!" The worm became immobile on the ground due to Minnie's shot. Arang let out a sigh of relief. The task was complete. However, Seong-gu felt something was off. He quickly shouted, "Not yet, Arang, shoot your arrow." Arang obediently shot an energy arrow at it. With a loud bang, the energy core exploded in front of them, immediately enveloping the area in dust. When the dust settled, Seong-gu saw the scene before him. There was a large hole in the ground. He frowned and muttered, "Did it escape?" However, Seong-gu quickly sensed something was wrong. The ugly worms were very strong, and the ferocious beasts would surely retaliate since they had angered it too much. Just then, a sudden noise came from behind. Seong-gu shouted loudly, warning, "Something's coming towards you!" However, the noise from the ground suddenly changed direction. Seong-gu realized it was heading towards Minnie, who was sitting on the ground looking a bit panicked. Seeing this, Arang rushed over to shield her. The worm emerged from the ground, and Arang hugged Minnie to protect her under his body. At that moment, the ugly worm opened its large mouth towards the two kids. Inside, there was a flag. Arang looked at Minnie and shouted, "Now!" Minnie immediately nodded, indicating she understood, and then took out a watch, seemingly to activate it. In an instant, the worm's mouth closed, and then for some unknown reason, it exploded. Seeing this scene, Senna excitedly shouted, "Awesome!" Yeseung also expressed surprise, saying, "That's incredible. How could they obtain such a weapon with so much explosive energy?" The head of the ugly worm exploded, releasing a disgusting black slime. At that moment, Seong-gu jumped up from the ground, holding a dagger in his hand, and thrust it forward. He shouted fiercely, "It's time to finish you off!" Seong-gu then stabbed the worm's body. Moreover, he tried to slash a line across its body. The worm, in pain, kept wriggling to escape. Seong-gu noticed this action and tightened his grip on the sword, silently cursing, "Damn it, how can this worm still be alive?" Even when its head was chopped off. While you were thinking, Yeseung ran from a distance, shouting loudly to remind you to quickly put down your sword. It was too dangerous, but Seong-gu didn't listen and still held tightly to the sword, unable to let go. "If you give up now, it will run away just at this moment." Suddenly, your eyes narrowed as the worm tried to burrow into the ground, and Seong-gu was pulled down into the earth by it. By the time Ji-seung ran over, it was too late. The faces of the two kids, Arang and Minnie, turned pale, their eyes filled with worry, while Seong-gu still wouldn't let go of his sword, ignoring the ugly worm pulling him down. You squinted at it. His body was covered in wounds. This would be its last struggle before dying, but at this rate you would suffocate and die first. Seong-gu took a deep breath, gripping the sword tightly. You focused your mind, summoning your energy. In an instant, energy filled Seong-gu's chest, and he quickly channeled that energy into his sword. Then he slowly pulled the sword out. Seong-gu furrowed his brow, extremely focused. After a moment of hesitation, he began to swing the sword, striking continuously at the body of the ugly worm above. Ji-seung, panicking, was digging into the ground, searching for Seong-gu, shouting loudly, "Why are you just standing there? You all need to pull him back." Hearing this, Senna sighed. Those kids weren't superhumans with strong bodies. How could they stop it? Gritting his teeth, Ji-seung said irritably, "I know I'm just saying that out of frustration. If he gets pulled deep into the ground, he will suffocate and die quickly. We don't have much time." He shouted, "The ground on the worm's path is very soft, so dig as much as you can." Just as those words left his mouth, Minnie seemed to see something. She pointed ahead and shouted, "There's something over there!" Ji-seung ran in the direction she was pointing and immediately saw a hand sticking up from the ground. He shouted in panic, "Seong-gu!" He quickly grabbed Xionggu's hand. Jiseong summoned energy and concentrated it into his palm. In an instant, he pulled Xionggu up from the ground. Xionggu pushed himself up, gasping for breath. Arang, seeing this, rushed over worried and asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Xionggu nodded slightly in response. At that moment, an unknown skill activated. Without that skill, he would have died. That strange feeling was very different. While Xionggu was thinking, Senna came over and punched him in the back, her face darkened with dissatisfaction, scolding, "Do you want to die?" "Why did you make us worry?" Xionggu, feeling guilty, mumbled, "I'm sorry." Saying that, he reached into his pocket. Jiseong saw what was in his hand, and his eyes widened in shock. In Xionggu's hand was a blue crystal core, 6-starred. Arang exclaimed joyfully, "You really brought back the crystal core." Jiseong, exasperated, held his head and said, "I'm at a loss for words. You risked your life for a common level 13 monster's crystal core." As soon as those words were out, Arang immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "I'm sorry." "You're a skilled hunter, so you always have plenty of crystal cores while we have to work continuously to replenish the cores we've used today," Jiseong angrily shouted, using crystal core weapons to make up for the shortage. "The attack power is good, but you have to choose a monster that matches your level. If it goes on like this, you will die on the next hunting trip." Saying that, he pointed at the bow and gun in the kids' bags, questioning angrily, "Where did you find those strange items?" Saying that, he pointed at the bow and gun in the 2 kids' bags, angrily questioning, "Where did you find those strange items?" Mr. Gu's vehicle hesitated, slightly unsure of how to respond. After a long silence, Minnie shyly raised her hand and explained, "I am a magic engineer." This statement left Jiseong stunned, unable to believe it, exclaiming, "Who are you, kid? What's your name?" Minnie lowered her head and mumbled, "I am Minnie Xionggu." At that moment, Xionggu sighed and explained, "I don't like the idea of an outsider knowing we have a magic engineer." Jiseong thought for a moment before speaking. "Since magic technology is quite rare, I wouldn't ignore it if rumors spread." Xionggu nodded slightly and then looked towards Arang. The kid understood the hint and smiled, saying, "Is it my turn to introduce myself now?" However, before the kid could finish, Jiseong pouted and said, "Oh, you are an archer, right?" The next person who made Arang annoyed was still pointing at him. "Are you still upset?" Jiseong, uninterested, walked up to Xionggu and asked, "As the team leader, what skills do you have?" Xionggu was a bit taken aback, unsure of how to respond. Seeing that he wasn't answering, Jiseong continued, "Your skills look similar to Chasu's. Did you learn from him?" He was surprised enough to think Xionggu had copied and fully absorbed Chasu's skills, but Xionggu used skills that were patched together in a way he had never seen before. It seemed that he couldn't properly execute any of them, so he didn't even know how to describe his own skills. Senna was also very surprised, asking, "Is it possible for one person to have so many skills?" Jiseong shook his head slightly. "It's possible if the skills are similar, but I've never heard of anyone having completely different basic skills." Xionggu pondered for a long time before stammering a reply. About that, just then the ground suddenly shook, startling him. Jiseong also noticed the movement and shouted in panic, "There's movement!" Xionggu frowned, remaining silent. After a moment, he hurriedly shouted, "Is it another bug?" It was slowly approaching. Saying that, Xionggu stood up from the ground, pursed his lips, and opened his mouth. "It must be a bug hatching from an egg. We have to kill it." Jiseong, seeing his actions, questioned, "Hey, what are you planning to do? You're still not fully recovered." Xionggu glanced at him and smiled, saying lightly, "Well, then we won't refuse or hinder your help." Jiseong nodded in response. "All right, let's go." Kim Hoon said nothing. He drew 2 swords from his back, and Jiseong also pulled out his knife, frowning and smiling. "We'll let you witness a simple hunt." Xionggu glanced at Sena behind him and saw she was not moving. He frowned in confusion. Is she a non-combat member? Shortly after, Jiseong and Kim Hoon stood in front of everyone. Now Jie squinted his eyes, focusing intently, preparing for battle as the movement underground grew closer to them. With a loud bang, the ground exploded and an ugly worm crawled up from beneath. Seeing it, Arang shouted in panic. "It's even bigger than the last one," Xionggu silently observed the worm. He grasped its every movement. It would go back underground before attacking. This was the best time to strike since it had no defense. Jiseong also realized this. He quickly shouted, "It's trying to burrow back into the ground, don't let it," saying that he immediately raised his knife, preparing to sweep it across. Xionggu was astonished to see this. Jiseong swung his knife toward the ugly worm. The ugly worm was sliced in half and Orang gasped in shock. What was that? Mini Seonggu stared blankly. The energy core was shot out from his sword. The ugly worm was cut in half and Orang gasped. What was that, Seonggu? He asked in confusion as the energy core was shot out from his sword. After saying that, he fell silent, thinking calmly. Although it happened in an instant, it resembled a skill he had used before, not just the ability of Yesong. But also, the energies that Seonggu did not know were emitted through the energy core equipped on their swords, instead of being released from the superpower user themselves. At this moment, Minnie suddenly shouted loudly while running away. Jiseong also realized its intention. Yen shouted loudly, and now Kim Hun nodded slightly in acknowledgement of the command before rushing forward. He plunged both of his swords straight into the body of that ugly worm. Jia Seung over here also stabbed his dagger into its body. At this moment, he hurriedly shouted, "Hun, don't move, hold it tight!" Kim Hun nodded slightly and then tightened his grip on his sword. Before long, black, slimy fluid burst out like rain. Seeing this scene, the two of them, Ji-sung, immediately felt joy. The two of them used their strength to slash a line across the body of the ugly worm. Ji-sung shouted loudly, "We have stabbed into its core." Orang, hearing this, exclaimed in surprise. The core, Seonggu slowly explained, "It's the hard shell protecting the nucleus." Jia Seung pushed the sword deeper. The hero shouted loudly, "Now pull it out!" "Yes!" Kim Hun immediately acknowledged the command, and both of them pulled their swords out together. Jia Seung summoned energy into his dagger. Seeing this scene, Seonggu was immediately astonished. He would use that skill again. Ji-sung, not knowing what he was thinking, focused on the dagger in his hand. Immediately, he fiercely struck a beam of energy straight into the body of that worm. This caused it to explode, its gigantic body splattering on the ground, releasing disgusting black slimy fluid. Seonggu was increasingly horrified. Ji-seung was completely on another level. At this moment, Ji-seung retracted his dagger and raised an eyebrow, smiling as he said, "Did you see that? That's what you call hunting." Just as he finished speaking, the head of the ugly worm suddenly moved, spewing out black, slimy fluid that rushed straight towards Jesung. He couldn't react in time and was completely covered by the fluid. By the time the fluid soaked into the ground, a swarm of small worms was crawling all over Yesyung's body. Arang, seeing this scene, panicked and shouted, "What is happening?" Seonggu ran towards Yesyung while explaining, "That's the parasite of the ugly Jun." He quickly reached Yesyung, who was in a state of panic. His mouth kept crying out, "Get them off me!" The worms crawled all over Yesyung's body, so many that they were uncountable. In a short time, Seonggu was pulling them off while thinking to himself that he had killed the Jun like a professional. He didn't think he would make such a rookie mistake. It was unusual for a hunter of Yesyung's caliber. He didn't understand that he had to kill the ugly worm before it spewed out parasites. At this moment, Seonggu noticed something. He glanced at Kim Hun and asked, "Why are you just standing there?" Kim Hun disdainfully replied, "I hate those little worms." Seonggu was taken aback and after a while awkwardly said sorry. At this moment, Jiseong suddenly mumbled something that made him frown in suspicion. What the hell is he talking about? What the hell is going on with this team? Jiseong didn't care and raised his hand towards Senna in the distance. Trembling, calling out Senna right now, Senna calmly asked, "For what?" Jiseong became increasingly anxious and shouted, "I will leave it to you." Senna still didn't take action, pouting and asking, "Are you just suggesting it verbally?" Jiseong shouted again, "A special meal I will give you double." Senna still remained unmoved, casually replying, "Oh, didn't you say you wouldn't give me anything? I will get fat if I eat too much." Hearing this, Yesyung cried out, "What are you really trying to do? In this situation, I will die. Please." It seemed he realized he was in a weak position and quickly changed his tone. "I was just joking." "Just kidding. I will give you the reward for the next mission." At that moment, Senna nodded in agreement, saying he couldn't take it back. Yesyung didn't dare to shake his head and quickly urged him to hurry up. Senna calmly stood up from the car, looking at the two handsome guys. Seonggu spoke up. "Stop, they are just blocking the way." Seonggu was taken aback and then stepped back. Arang quickly followed suit. Senna nodded in satisfaction, thinking that should be enough. Saying that, she raised both hands forward and in an instant, a surge of energy appeared in her hands. Jesung's body was also enveloped by energy and the worms on him disappeared into thin air. Jesung finally let out a sigh of relief. Senna is healing him. Seonggu then realized her ability, but one thing surprised him. Senna could use her power from such a distance. They are a team you have never seen or heard of before. Senna was still focused on healing Yesyung. Minnie looked at her with admiration. After a moment, she stopped, raised an eyebrow, and smiled, saying he felt better now. Yesyong immediately jumped up from the ground. Xionggu was surprised and asked if he was okay. He sighed and said, "I was drained more than you think." "You were shocked and asked what was happening here." Yesyong closed his eyes, pouted, and said, "The story brought by Lee Jasung with his beloved sister Kwon Sena will be the main character, don't you think so?" Xionggu was surprised and suspicious, asking, "Wait a minute, is all of this a script?" Yesyong stood up from the ground laughing and said, "It was all planned since that ugly worm appeared. Isn't it wonderful?" Saying that, he pointed at Sena, pouting, and said, "I almost died due to her unexpected actions, but this way is quite fun, isn't it?" CEO Gu was a bit speechless. After hesitating for a long time, he continued to ask, "I have a question. What was that attack from your sword earlier?" This made Yesyong stunned. Waiting until he reacted, he immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "You don't know anything about energy cores." CEO Gu was confused. Seeing that Yesyong helplessly shook his head, the road ahead was really unclear, but quickly his tone changed to confident, saying, "Don't worry, you will get through them. I think we have proven that we are capable of being your guides. Don't you think so?" Xionggu was stunned by this and stared at him for a moment. Yesyong stood in front of Xionggu and slowly spoke. "I will explain some theories first, and Sena will assist me." He said no one can defeat Sena in the skill of using energy cores. After hearing this, Xionggu suspiciously asked if he intended to teach both Arang and Minnie. Yesyong thought for a moment before answering, "Because that boy is not a superpower user, so quality training like this is meaningless, and it's too early for a magic teacher to learn how to use energy cores." But he said if Xionggu wanted a real fight, he needed basic skills in physicality and combat, as that was Kim Hun's specialty, so Yesyong would leave it to him to handle. Arang, who had just been knocked down by Kim Hun, didn't let it go and coldly spoke up again. On this side, Di-seong was focusing on teaching Xionggu. "Now let's start our class. We will go over the foundational knowledge first. You have heard about the classification of superpowers, right?" "Right. We will briefly go over the foundational knowledge first. You have heard about the classification of superpowers, right?" "That's right." The CEO calmly replied that they are divided into 6 different areas: physical enhancement, supernatural abilities, magical engineering, soul control, and dark magic. Dammak nodded. Jeseong quickly added that these are the most common areas of superpower strength, referred to as intrinsic traits and energy cores that each superpower possesses. It will change based on their individual characteristics. That is why some people have physical enhancements while others can use firepower. Xionggu, upon hearing this, skeptically asked if he was talking about individual characteristics. Jisung did not answer. A stream of energy appeared in his hand. Seeing it, Xionggu was immediately astonished, his eyes wide. Jisung slowly explained, however, if you do not undergo this transformation process, then you will be able to release the original energy core. This is what we call the common trait. Xionggu understood upon hearing this. It was similar to his moon shadow sword and the exploding sword. He had gathered the original energy cores inside the sword and then released it. After thinking, Xionggu nodded in response. "The common trait is amazing." Just as he finished speaking, Yesyong coldly interjected, "But there is another reason explaining why. The common trait is equally important. It directly relates to increasing the number of energy cores you have." He said that if Xionggu knows how to use the common trait, then he will be able to gradually increase the number of his energy cores, just like in games that appeared before the Great Flood. Each time he levels up, he will also level up accordingly.